This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board Meeting for Wednesday, May 17th, beginning at 6:30 here at Frederick School. We need a call to order and a roll call, please.
Mack.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Albert.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
And Weedman.
Here.
Thank you, everybody. That gives our quorum. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right, I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda, please.
I'll move.
Second.
I don't think my mic is on.
No, I don't think your mic is working. I'll second.
Miller.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Albert.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
And Nash.
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any public comments signed up for the first round? No. Okay. Then we move straight to the best part of the night, the recognition. We have the Science Olympiad team and the MILE program with us this evening.
Thank you so much. We know it's a little warm in here. Mr. Halpern is working on the air conditioning. It's May and a lot of kids. So thank you everyone for your patience. I'm going to invite Mr. Smith to come on up, and I think he's got some introductions to do.
My job tonight is going to be very quick. Thank you again for allowing us to bring some more great tonight. I'm here to celebrate GMS and Frederick students. So I am going to introduce both our coaches, Mrs. Pam Zusky and Dr. Alec Renner, our GMS and Park Science Olympiad coaches.
Thank you very much for inviting us to this forum. We're very excited to share our achievements, and we have a couple slides with pictures in it, and just to list some of our achievements. And Mr. Renner, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, it's humbling that you've taken the time to recognize our exploits. Our town has decades of passion into this program and a very strong showing this season, which we're going to reflect on the screen with lots of vibrant photographs for you.
All right, so this year we have pictures from GMS and Frederick together, and you can see some of the really dynamic things that they're doing. We've got kids on the ground, we've got the lab coats because of the labs that they're doing, we have flight, and some other fun.
Students take tests in school all day long, so programmatically speaking, it's really important to them and us that we get them hands-on doing things, mixing chemicals in a lab, building and flying an airplane, and so on.
So the first competition that we did was at Rockford Christian. And starting in November, we have 16 parents and 2 high school coaches that met with our students for an hour each week per event. It's hard to summarize the whole program, but that's as succinct as I could get it. Then 20 GMS students competed in 1 to 4 events each at Rockford to cover the 23 events that we were offered. So each student can study up to 4. We had students studying 4 and some even competing in 5 because we need to cover each of those 23 events, and you can go in with a partner. And students earned medals in 16 of the events that day. Killdeer, do you want to tell them about Killdeer?
Yes, ma'am. So Killdeer is the largest invitational in the state with 56 teams. That is almost national tournament size. Very competitive. We're very excited that it's in our region. Both Frederick and GMS competed in this activity. So since the last invite that Coach Zusky just explained, Frederick had begun practicing with the middle school to get ready for this tournament. And at this tournament, does it say how many medals we got?
4.
Okay. Yeah.
4 events.
Frederick got 4 medals and GMS got 4 medals. Frederick didn't get any. Yeah.
Their very first time out.
Yeah, it was a few weeks out and great attitudes, and you can see some of our exploits on the screen. It's great. And a full house on the wards.
For the regionals at the College of Lake County, the GMS team earned 19 in 19 events, excuse me, and we're 4th place overall.
And Frederick medaled in 9 events and was 5th place overall. Both of our teams won bids for the state tournament, which is a very exciting opportunity for our 5th graders. This is a 6th grade, 6 through 9 competition, so to get our 5th graders to state, it's wonderful.
And it definitely reflects the phenomenal teaching of our teachers in our district, because we do coach them, we do help them, but they have a great base that helps to get them to succeed. Because I've done this program in different districts, and this one, they do really well. So it's a compliment to the teachers. And then our last slide, state. We were at the University of Illinois in April. They earned medals in 4 events for GMS and finished in 12th place out of 41 teams in our state.
And Frederick placed in a separate division. They divide us out to recognize as many schools as possible, make the trip downstate worthwhile. So Frederick placed 14th out of 20, and we got medals in 5 events, including 1 student medal solo in 1 event.
That's right. And we also, worth noting, is meteorology. They were 1st place in the state. So I was very proud of our team for that, too. Good job.
Programmatically speaking, any state medal is a great honor, but a 1st place goal is very rare to see.
Yes. And we've also been working together to help the students study, which is a benefit for both schools as mentor for the older students. But we do still need to have the 2 coaches, because if we combined into one, then we would be disqualified for state. So I just also wanted to mention that, because it's really amazing that you let us do both of these, that we have coach at both schools and we can do this program and offer it to a whole.
We also maintain close relationships with both high schools. Both of us have alumni who come back and help us coach with our students and continue that train of mentorship throughout time, and it's very edifying to see.
So thank you again for having us come. And do we have the students? I don't know what the protocol is. Students can.
We have some ribbons for the students, so I think maybe come on up this way. That would be the easiest way, and we can get a picture too, yep.
Yeah.
Where'd you get your residency?
Sorry?
Where'd you get your residency?
Weiss Hospital on the north side of Lakeshore Drive.
Okay, that's not too bad. You gotta get an apartment closer, huh?
30 minutes from the ER for requirements. I'm looking at Evanston right now.
Okay.
3 years out there, and then I can move back to the suburbs.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in Evanston. You gotta find a nice place.
The joke I was telling Alex was I'll be Bella's neighbor before she graduates.
Maybe. Congratulations.
Yes. All right. We have another student presentation to do. I didn't ask you before, but Dr. Lorenzo, do you want to introduce this group? I thought you might.
Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. I am super excited to have Heather Peters with me with her fabulous team of students to share all about their Kindness Ambassador mission and program that they have at Park School. So I'm going to be joining them up at the podium because she has some slides to share, and the kids want to share some goodies with you. Emmy, lead the train here. Emmy, follow me. Miss Peters is going to talk. You get to turn around and when I say you got to talk first. Come turn around. Come on, Miles. Ryan.
Ready? So I'm Mrs. Peters. I'm one of the classroom teachers for our MILE program over at Park School, and I have third, fourth, and fifth graders this year. Last year was hard, I'm sure, for everybody, and I decided let's make everyone's day a little brighter. And so my class and I created kindness cards with just sayings to uplift the staff in the building and attach little pieces of candy to them just to kind of give a smile to their day. And we decided to continue that this year, but the students this year were able to give them to the staff directly, whereas last year we just secretly put them in mailboxes. And so the students can really see the impact that they're making when they are giving that note to one of the staff members in the building. So our,
Do you want us to click the slides, Brandon?
sorry, I don't know.
So there's our district mission. I'm going to come around. We're very proud that this work is really closely connected to all of our mission, but specifically our cultivating community. Very important to all of us.
So our mission is to spread kindness, uplift all staff in the building, see the impact small acts can make, practice our fine motor skills with the drawing and the writing of the messages that we do, and we're practicing our social skills when we're entering the classroom, knocking, asking permission to come in, greeting others, and then leaving that classroom as well. And so here's some just pictures of us creating our kindness cards, and around the pictures are the sayings that are on the kindness cards. And then here is some of our students delivering those messages to staff. I think that's the last one, so you guys can. We're going to pass out our kindness cards to the board members, and then if we have some left over, we can give some to the audience too. So we're just going to take one. Ready? It's your turn to be a fan. You want to? Thank you. You're going to find a good one. Good job, guys. We're going to hand them all out, guys. Here, I'll hold you back. We're going to pass to the tables first. Thank you, Emmy. Thank you. Ben, over here.
While these are coming around, I just wanted to mention that last week I had the opportunity to spend an entire afternoon in this class, and the students that are handing out these kindness cards are indeed as kind as you would believe from watching this. And earlier this year, I was just standing in the hallway, and one of these was handed to me, and it absolutely made my day. And I ate the candy. Yes, absolutely. So, and then Mrs. Peters, if the students can come on back up, because the board has ribbons for them. Thank you.
This is the best part of the time, is just fighting for
thank you all so much. I think we're going to let Mrs. Peters' class go out first. Thank you so much, Mrs. Peters and students, for being here. Dr. Wilk is going to take a photo of everyone out there. And I'm just going to ask Science Olympiad to just wait for a moment until our students from Mrs. Peters' class go out. And then we'll also have a moment, oh, actually, maybe we can do a picture in here right now. Let's do it. All right, so can we have all of our Science Olympiad students standing up here, and the board standing up, and we'll get a picture. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're going to move, once we're moving unfinished business to the very end, so silence will be before that, which is that activity 3. So that'll be at the very end.
That'll probably be.
All right, that's a wonderful way to spend the evening. We move straight on to our presentation for this evening with Dr. Karner from the Regional Office of Education. Welcome, Dr. Karner.
Is the power? There you go. Okay. Yeah, you don't need to do that. Thank you. All right, so I am Michael Karner. I oversee the Regional Office of Education for Lake County, Illinois. I started in this position April 27th of 2021, and tonight I just wanted to show you what the ROE does and some of the new programs and initiatives that we put in place to help support districts better. There we go. So as you can see, some of you might remember over the years, the ROE office, the main office was at CLC out the College of Lake County. Our PD center was actually at the Tech campus, and the Safe School used to be at the old Zion Benton Pierce campus in Zion, Illinois. So a few years back, even before I started, I was the principal at the Safe School there too. They had to move the school to another location in Zion due to Pierce being torn down. And then during the pandemic, right in 2020, the ROE office moved to the Permit Center off Milwaukee Avenue in Libertyville. So one of the main goals that I had was to have all of our functions in one space. So we were able to find an office suite that has our school on the backside to ensure that now we have like our truancy services, the ROE, the safe school, and our PD all in one location. One of the benefits that this has been, especially with the safe school, we've had more people utilize it now. And that's helped with like distance, because if you think about a few years back, if I was in Barrington and had to use the service, a student would be traveling almost over an hour just to get to Zion. Now, located in Vernon Hills, it's about 35 minutes tops for, I'd say, any school district in Lake County. The main two functions of the ROE are to ensure that schools are safe for staff and students to be in. So those are our health, life, safety inspections that you'll see presented usually in around October or November of every single year. We go into every single school, ensure like the boilers are properly certified, elevators, fire alarms, strobes, etc. Then we give a report to the district, and then we work with them to ensure that they have corrected any findings that we have. The other piece is ensuring that all staff are properly certificated and licensed. And then on top of that, we do compliance visits every 4 years. So that's where we go through everything with policies, ensuring they're aligned to the State Board of Education. And we work to ensure like everybody was properly hired, you have all the correct documents, et cetera. So that occurs every 4 years. The other big thing with the ROE is that all your building permits, so anytime you do any construction, you don't have to pay for permits through your local village or city. You come through us and the permits are free, so that helps to save a lot of money. So we handle all the building permits in Lake County for all of our schools. Some of the other areas that we assist, so that you know of, I basically consider us like an arm of the State Board of Education. So we do things with the school maintenance project grant that you will sometimes approve at your board meetings during the school year. We always get those sent to us, then we send them on to ISB, and then ISB provides a notification that they're approved or whatnot. Every time you submit the public school calendar every year, we have to review that, then send it to ISB. Anything with your health, life, safety surveys, the gender equity and athletics waiver, remote learning plans. We do things with ALOPS around the county. We have a few districts that have it. I'll talk about that piece later. We always, I look at every single annual financial report when it's sent to our office, because I sign it and send it to ISB. And then the other piece with school treasurer bonds. So we always make sure every district is properly bonded. So we instituted a new process last year. After the first year I started, was making sure that the districts would actually have the calculation so we could see, because that protected everybody in Lake County. We do the spelling bee. We help with work permits and age certificates. So usually the local district will provide work permits to the students in the school year. And then we're always as a backup if anybody needs to come during the summer. And then one of the other things we still do with some of the districts is read and recovery, which is an intervention program from a long time ago. We'll do licensure and fingerprinting. So most districts, so you know, nowadays, every district usually does the fingerprinting at their local district. Many have the software there and the actual product so you can use it, but we also have that at our office, and we usually fingerprint all the subs and anybody that we have to obviously hire for our office. We get all those background checks, sent to us. We're usually the first notification if there is like educator misconduct or whatnot. Then we work with the district as well. On top of that, we oversee all the GEDs and the high school equivalency exams for Lake County. So anybody who completed that, from the beginning of time, those records are held at our office. So we'll have students or adults come back looking for their GED so they can apply for college potentially or for work. One of the things, so you know too, the GED is also called the Illinois High School Diploma now. That was changed last year. Bus driver trainings. We hold all initial certification trainings and then the recertification trainings for bus drivers. So we hold all those at our office. We've tried to actually up those classes since I've started, because last year, most districts were saying there was a bus shortage, so we tried to get as many classes as possible to help with that situation. So we hold all of those trainings there. Sometimes other counties will utilize us too, and then we've tried to move those around too to make it more mobile to help districts out so not everybody has to come to Vernon Hills. The attendance and truancy division and our ESD division. So attendance and truancy, what we do with that is this. I kind of reconfigured the whole division once I started. Right before I came in, they lost funding, but we were able to get more funding back from the State Board of Education through the budget. So now we have a truancy officer again. We have 3 behavioral specialists who are right under the truancy officer who will do with truancy cases. And then we also have a counselor / social worker. Anytime the district submits a truancy referral, you have to do it and follow your local policy. Some of you might remember passing that policy earlier this year. So you follow through with that locally. And then once it's potentially not resolved at your local level, you send it to us, and then we try to find different interventions to help assist students. So we have funding for, maybe jobs. Maybe a student needs a job at the high school level. Maybe it's tutoring. Maybe it's extra mental health services. Maybe it's they need extra therapy or courses. We work to try to get that kid back into school. It could be transportation. So most of the students that are truant, they might not have an opportunity to ride the bus, so we make sure that we work with the district so the student can get back in. And then if we need to, which it's rare, we send it to the state's attorney's office for a higher up than us. But the goal is to keep it out of the courts. Our ESD division is all of our professional development, so we've tried to beef that up since I started. We host all the admin academies for like the teacher evaluation, principal certification, things like that. And then we also have workshops throughout the year. We work with districts. Some of them utilize us to bring in, like maybe they need a specific math professional development or a science. A lot of districts do things in-house, but they might have a one-off PD that they can't find somebody. They might need our expertise, so that's when we'll come in as well. And then one of the other things that we've done, we had our safety conference this past year. So we started that 2 years ago, and we've really been focused on safety, SEL, mental health supports for all of our school districts. So we had the safety conference this past year, had about 300 people. And there's people from all over districts, the police departments, everything, so we're going to continue that. We also last year started our summer Jump Into Splash. It's a countywide institute, but we started it off in the summer just to see how people would react to it and participate, and we had about 185 last year. We're doing it again this June 13th, this summer again. And the goal then is to then move that into the school year next year. So we have quite a few districts that have designated a certain day within the school calendar as an institute day. So our goal is to then have PD for every single position possible that exists in a school district, then offer that. And they can go to different sites or have it virtually. So a nurse can get their PD, paraprofessionals, et cetera. And we've also started a leadership academy this past year for future leaders. So we've had teachers or people interested in becoming administrators go through a year-long academy, and actually 3 people who participate in the academy actually got an administrator job. So we'll continue with that. And we just continue to find different ways to help support districts. We oversee the McKinney-Vento program, so that's for anything that deals with homeless students in Lake County. So if District 46, for example, were to have a homeless student, they potentially would work with our office, and then we can help provide resources or funds, and also put them in touch with services in Lake County. One of the things that we do have for every homeless child in Lake County is free mental health services. So the district can put a referral in, and then that child can be seen if they need outside therapy or support. So that's one cool thing that we've done that actually occurs in Lake, Cook, DuPage, McHenry, basically the whole Area 1. And then on top of that, we work, if students have issues potentially with transportation for that, or are they in the correct district, we always work with the district on that before it has to go to ISB. The other thing we also have been working with is early childhood. That's been one of my bigger initiatives. And 2 gentlemen from my office, they oversee the Early Childhood Coalition, but this past year we put more professional development in too for early childhood educators. I have a preschool student, so I understand the importance of early childhood, so we've really made a big push this year to provide support for districts that wanted to apply for the Earlyhood Child Block Grant. And we have I'm not sure if you've been able to see, but in all of Lake County, we probably have over 25,000 students not in seats between the ages of 3 and 6. So it's a huge county problem where if you don't have preschool at one district, et cetera, maybe there's not enough options within their local community. So we've been trying to find ways to help get funding so that can occur. And then another thing we're doing with is a Birth to 5 initiative that we're looking to get off the ground, where it doesn't matter where you're born at within Lake County, they would leave, family would leave with almost like a card, a QR code on it, which would then send it to our website. The families would log in, give us all their information. We would then turn that information back in to the local school district that they'll be in, so that then the local district can start early communications with them, before they actually get there for preschool, kindergarten. And then I'll look to provide books or whatnot for ages 1 through 3. And then make sure we have parents as teachers programs, so if families need assistance, whether it's virtual or in person at their house. And then at the same time, the 3rd level is if they need early childhood intervention services. The Regional Safe School Program is the alternative school for Lake County. It serves grades 6 to 12. Students who are put here have been put up for expulsion or usually suspended multiple times in their local school district. We are not a diploma granting institution, so if you were to have somebody put up for expulsion, you could send them to us for the designated period of time. It's usually ranges from 6 months to at the max 2 years. And then if they meet all the requirements and they return to that local district, we've had students graduate. They go through our program, go back to the high school, then graduate at their local district. Same thing where we've had kids come in middle school, then return for promotion and go on to the high school. So it's that's held in Vernon Hills, like I mentioned. And then we also started last year the BASE program. So the BASE program is something new. It is a short-term suspension program. So it's set up similar to the Safe School. And what happens is if a student is suspended 4 to 10 days out of school, in lieu of suspension, the district can send the child to us at the BASE program where we work on them with their academics, behavior, social, emotional, have an intake and outtake meeting so that they hopefully are successful upon their return. And we probably had about 65 kids come through all of Lake County this past year, and only 3 people who have returned as a repeat through that. So that's helped some school districts who have looked to potentially not having that home due to whatever infraction was committed, and then they're around adults and then getting all the services that they need still. Reading recovery, which I won't go into very much, but it was just an intervention program that existed way back in the day in Lake County, and we still have a few school districts who utilize it. So for me, it's important to help support those districts. So we still participate in that. So you know what the Regional School Board of Trustees does. Everybody thinks it's like the county school board, but it's not. They are 7 elected officials, just like yourselves, and they only see petitions for annexation, separation, detachment, or dissolvement of a school district. So their business is very limited. They only meet if they have new business. They have 4 meetings a year, and there has been really no new business since about probably 2017. Lake County is pretty developed, so there's really no boundary disputes. The only things that could occur is usually if districts were to leave a sped co-op. That would be probably the main function of them going forward. This I'll touch on briefly. The Peoria ROE used to run the Illinois Virtual School. It was out of Peoria. They shut down. They lost funding from the state board, so I restarted it as the Illinois Virtual Schools and Academy this past summer. Offers credit recovery, supplemental courses. We've been able to serve over 3,000 students in the state of Illinois. We work with probably 135 school districts who have agreements with us. We're a part of the Illinois Virtual Course Catalog. So that means if you have a course we've had a district use it because they couldn't offer an accelerated course for a student because they didn't have a teacher. They'll let the student take the course through us, and then they get reimbursed by the state. And then we started a full-time virtual academy for grades 6 to 12. We have about 45 kids in there who've been put in there for various reasons, whether it's medical, homebound, truancy potentially, behavior, mental health, maybe substance abuse. So we've helped serve that. So it's just been as a tool just to help assist districts with potentially teacher shortages or whatever their needs may be. So I mentioned some of the things already, like the Lake County Splash, which is on year 2 this year. We did the Lake County Educator Job Fair the past 2 years. Now I can tell you we have had people hired at both of those events, but it's just not like it was almost 15 years ago. I can tell you that. I remember when I went to the gym to look for a job, the Vernon Hills High School, it was jam-packed door to door. You hope to get in front of a line of somebody. Now, I mean, I'm sure people will tell you the job fairs are, less and less people there, but I still believe it's helpful, just because we need to have as many opportunities as possible. Talked about the safety conference, the Educator of the Year ceremony, which the jazz band performed last week. It was awesome. And, Dr. Glickman was instrumental in that, and she's amazing. So that went very well. We had probably 350 people attend last year, and this year it was 768. So that continues to grow, and thank you for your participation. Everybody loved the event the past 2 years, and we'll continue to make minor tweaks. We started the ROE Share Drive. That was basically just an information hub for all of our district administrators so they have access to anything with safety, any of the documents that we provide. So everybody has access to that in Lake County who's a district administrator. Last year we also did free virtual field trips for the whole county that they had access to, and we've been doing monthly newsletters. So I send out a monthly newsletter to superintendents, and then all of our educators get it too who are signed up. We're continuing to try to improve our communication so more and more people get our newsletter. This past year, I already mentioned some of it, the Birth to 5 initiative, the quarterly safety meeting we started this past year, and one of the cool initiatives that we're doing for like safety, violence, and mental health, which I'll talk about in a second, but the safety piece is we're providing a free safety app to every single district in Lake County that if they so choose to. Some districts have like a Raptor already, like the technology or whatnot, but through us, we're providing that for free through a $1 million grant that we got that districts can utilize. And then we're working on a whole countywide notification so that if like a school goes into a lockdown, more people know, because one of the issues around the county has been like a neighboring district will go in, then the district right next to it borders it is like, do I have to go into lockdown, et cetera. So hopefully this will help inform them if they need to or not. And then at the same time, it'll all reach all the local law enforcement, county enforcement, and then the Illinois State Police. I mentioned the Leadership Academy already. Project Search, we took over from CEDAL. That helps serve students ages 18 to 22 in transition. So they have their IEP served at Sedgwick, Clearbrook, and Vernon Hills. And what they do is they do like a work internship experience, and that usually then leads to a job afterwards. So that helps serves Lake County. We've tried to implement our ROE Foundation in a more efficient manner. We've probably received at least over $1.6 million in grant opportunities since I began, so we're trying to make sure that we take the money and then help provide districts extra funding for initiatives that they need to do. We're always looking to improve our attendance rates and some of the teacher programs and certifications we've done now. We got Grand Canyon University. First of all, I'm going to say I'm all about Illinois and Lake County. Okay, that's CLC, universities, everybody. I'm all about it. But we also know that sometimes programs are expensive, and these are different options. Like Grand Canyon, for example, every educator in Lake County has access to scholarship and reduced tuition rates. You as board members do, your spouses do, all students in Lake County do, so it's a free partnership agreement that we have. 51 educators have taken advantage of that this year, and that's helped them to potentially get LBS 1 certification or like an ESL certification. We've done things with Bloom Board that have offered the certification programs at a much reduced cost. Like for the LBS 1, it probably costs about $5,600 compared to what you're usually seeing of $12,000 to $15,000. And the new one, Teacher Ready, has programs too for like a bachelor's to teacher certification that could potentially cost someone $5,600 within a year. And they're doing all of their things locally at the district. And then Bloom Board also came out with a new para to teacher that's going to probably cost around $12,000 to $15,000 that can be subsidized and whatnot. And we're just trying to provide as many opportunities as possible for people to accomplish what they need. I talked about the safety piece earlier, but some of the other things that we've been working on through this grant, and one of them, I know you utilize Care Solace. So one of the big things has been mental health supports. So we're trying to finalize like an RFP that potentially like a Care Solace or referral GPS who we utilize for the McKinney-Vento students would be provided to every district free in Lake County. So if it was Care Solace, basically, you would then get reimbursed the money or whatnot. But we're going to provide that to every district and school in Lake County, and then have a funding pot so that no matter what your income or insurance level is, students will be able to get seen still. Because one of the big issues sometimes if uninsured Medicaid, sometimes it's harder to get in, but that's going to help with the mental health piece. The violence prevention, what we've been working on is having trainings for like conflict resolution, de-escalation, like a low-level cognitive behavioral intervention that we're going to kind of do like roll out a train-the-trainer model that would be employed potentially by the district, and then if more teachers wanted that, we could then assist with that as well. And that's in partner with Chicago Cred from Arnie Duncan's organization. I think this last slide. These are just, I serve on many committees like the CEDAL Board, Tech Campus Board, Workforce Development, I'm on the ISB, Educator Shortage Committee, the Equity Committee, the Professional Review Panel, which looks at evidence-based funding, so I try to get in as much as possible. I think that's my last slide, right? Yeah, I think so. All right, the last two things, and I'll be done so these wonderful ladies can speak. we've just been trying to do as much as possible to support districts. One of the initiatives I'm trying to get off the ground, hopefully in the next few days, we're looking at providing like mental health supports during the summer. So if like a district identified a student that needed therapy during the summer, we could pay for that. We're trying to get a free like virtual math and language arts course for every pre-K to grade 5 student in the summer that they could utilize at home. And we're also trying to get some STEM things too. So we're trying to finalize that in this next week, hopefully. That's all I really had. And oh yeah, so you know too, we're really, at CTE, we're trying to improve, you know, work-based learning opportunities at the high school level. So you'll start to see, I mean, I know you have a great district with District 127, who's kind of like the leader with CTE, you know, in Lake County, to be honest. So you know, Lake County was chosen as one of 10 counties in the nation for the youth build system that by the Department of Labor. So we're working on that and ensuring that all the districts have the pathways. So at the high school level, ensuring that all of our businesses are able to participate if they want to host internships, and going forward having like almost like a middle school career fair, experiential learning. So at the fairgrounds, hopefully by next year. So.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carner. I'm sure the board has questions for you. Yes, you can clap. I see people wanting to clap. You can. I'm sure the board has questions for you, board. I just wanted to make a few comments before you ask your questions. Every month, Dr. Carner comes to our Lake County Superintendent's meetings and presents. And every single month, there is something new happening at the ROE. And I have to tell you that is extremely unusual for an ROE. I was smiling, Dr. Carner, that your very first slide was about compliance, and you said something like, oh, really, our job is about compliance. But I'm sure this board heard this much of what you all do is compliance, because our ROE, led by Dr. Carner, is really much more about being visionary. And so many of the things that were just described did not exist a few years ago. We as superintendents are constantly chasing, trying to catch up and figure out, can we take advantage of that? How can we do that? Because it's just such a plethora of opportunities for us. So thank you very much for all that you do. We constantly ask him if he sleeps. He never answers the question, so there you go. Right, there's the committees. There it is. So, boy, what kinds of questions do you have for Dr. Carner, or comments?
Well, thank you, Dr. Carner. This was a very content-rich presentation, and I took a plethora of notes. To respect the time given to my other board colleagues, I will try to limit to 2, but I have many questions. You talked about the safety conference and SEL conference, and I was interested in what were some of the topics covered as part of the safety conference, just knowing the national conversation that's taken place as it pertains to school safety. So if you could share some of those topics and some outcomes.
Sure. For the safety conference, we had presentations from like some of our local partners, so like our county state's attorney's office, cyberbullying, responsibly using, you know, technology, dating violence, those pieces. And we had Paul Timms, who is a pretty well-known school safety consultant who works with a lot of our districts here. It's usually like him, or Kenneth Trump is the name, who we brought in also. Talked about just ensuring like how like your plans are, like your response plans. Like, what are you getting to ensure your schools are safe? Like, what protocols that you have in? We had other things like District 112, North Shore 112, who experienced the Highland Park tragedy this past year. They came in and presented and kind of showed like what they did for all the supports to help their stakeholders in Highland Park. And then other presentations kind of revolved around just school safety with like, are you using locks, what other protocols with like the technology pieces, and mainly response plans. Okay. And then we've also done things with like the Attorney General's office, like with threat assessments. That was another thing, because there's been an uptick in threat assessments this past year in Lake County. And then with regards to SEL, we do things where we're part of the Area 1 hub, where we have a grant that we can provide any social emotional learning PD, basically in partnership with like Leary's Children's Hospital. They partner with the regional superintendent organization. So we have PD throughout the year that focuses on different aspects of SEL, equity, and things like that.
That's awesome. I know you said that about 300 people attended last year. How do you then cascade all of that information out to the rest of Lake County? Because I would imagine that this is something that every district needs to kind of be connected to.
So one of the biggest things I can tell you that we still have to work on at our office is the whole communication piece. We just got a new website, so that will actually help with a lot of our communications. We've built listservs up of different positions, so we've been trying to focus on ensuring that, like, we have meetings with directors of special education, ELL, facilities managers. I've been to like every group of those and in Lake County, but the biggest thing is making sure we've collected all the emails. Now it's about putting it all out there so everybody knows. A lot of the district administrators have the ROE share drive, so they have easy access, but it's also about making sure like the building level and then teachers also have opportunities for the programs. A lot of the districts do a great job of passing the information out so that like they know about national board certified teachers, et cetera. So it's just, we're working on continuing improving that whole communication chain.
Okay, great. And then you touched on equity, which is very near and dear to my heart. So I love the insights around the free virtual field trips. I'm like, what a great way, right, to ensure equity where you don't have to worry about, even if it's like what some people may think is a nominal cost, $5, $10 for a field trip, right? For somebody else's family that maybe, put them in a hardship. So the fact that there's free field trip opportunities I thought was fantastic too. Along that equity thought, though, you talked about the talent pipeline that the ROE supports and the leadership program to get the teachers into administrative positions. And I know as a district, we spend a lot of time talking about our talent pipeline to attract and retain diverse talent. And so, just wondering what type of opportunities we may have as a district to kind of plug into any additional networks you have. I know our Chris Wolk, our Director of Human Resources, is attuned to this, but is there anything else that we should be looking at as a district?
The other opportunities they've had through like ISB is the affinity groups that has helped with educators, diverse educators in Lake County. And then we recently passed out information about the Bridges Fellowship for teachers of color who are interested in taking that next step, potentially in being an administrator, where they had opportunities to apply for the scholarships and whatnot.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll echo with the gratitude that Mrs. Nash offered. Thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing and telling us about it. I have questions about two things in particular. One is the countywide notification system, and the second is the Lake County Opioid Initiative. And for both, I'm just wondering what you're learning, what are the things in the works, where are each of those initiatives going?
So for the countywide notification system, I talked about the app that we're providing for free to school districts. So every school district can have it for free. The goal is now if a district has one in place, or they might not be able to put it in place, that they're just going to use the basic function of the notification piece. If they want to go into detail with like putting your, locally putting the building plans for your specific schools and all those communications with that, they can. But what we're trying to make sure is with this app is that if anybody experiences a lockdown, they can just text it in quick. It'll send a text message, email, just to the high level, like superintendents and maybe one or two other people that they've identified. It'll say District A, soft lockdown, District A, hard lockdown. And they'll get that notification. That will also go to all the local law enforcement, the county sheriffs, and the Illinois State Police. And then from there, we've had some, I said, issues throughout the year where we've had issues where it started on the east side of the county, went all the way through the west. And it might not affect over here as much sometimes with like the tech campus, but high school districts are sending kids to the tech campus and not knowing what they should send back, et cetera.
Right.
But just trying to make sure everybody knows, because districts have also stated like, well, my neighboring district went on lockdown and my local police department put them in lockdown, but they didn't even contact me. But then they have parents call saying, well, shouldn't you be on lockdown? The high school is, et cetera. So we're hoping that this will help improve on that, and that will get all of the people on the same page. And then all it is just saying, lockdown canceled or whatnot. And that'll be sent out to everybody. But it's like I said, it's only be high-level people, so not everybody's getting blasted. And then for the Lake County Opioid Initiative, so one of the things that we've been looking at is, Lake County, Illinois has funding coming to them in the revenue stream for like the next 20 years. The Illinois Attorney General's office sued like the big pharma who made the pills. I can't think of what they're called right now. Oxycontin, things like that. So they're getting funding. So what they're looking to do at the county government level is then put that money back in so we can provide PD for schools. Obviously, if you haven't heard, there is an uptick in opioid use in Lake County. I can tell you that, I mean, every zip code has had some type of overdose or, people overdose and live. I think this past year, for this year, we're at about 33 deaths to start the year for just overdoses. So we're looking at, what can we do then to help the schools? We're going to have funding from the county government to then help have, PD so that could be utilized in the school, and then the school district could then utilize that locally. But everybody's kind of working together to come up with ideas. They did pass a law down at the General Assembly for having safe drug education going forward for 2024. So we figure if this next year we can start to get things ready to go, it'll be more successful in the future. And trying to work with high schools to have fairs. So even if you wanted a fair for your county, not your county, but your district, we could help get all the resources and you could have it and host it there. It's just about making parents aware because things are coming in so many different forms nowadays.
Thank you.
I just have two comments, actually. One, I want to thank you for the presentation and thank you for professionally helping me. I've availed myself of the ROE a lot as I transitioned from higher education into high school teaching, and it's been an awesome resource for some of the loopholes that I've been jumping through. And I signed up for your newsletter just now, so very good. Thank you, Dr. Carner.
Great questions. So far, I don't have further questions. That just struck me. What an opportunity to provide resources at the right scale, so not too big. So is B, trying to cover the entire state and probably a little too much of a peanut butter approach, and maybe doesn't work for everybody because it's trying to serve everybody. Mm-hmm. And then at a district level, just the amount of funding that we have or the resources that we have, but it feels like it's a really nice level to pool resources and offer services. So very cool. Thank you so much for coming.
I just wanted to say thanks for coming. I don't even know if my mic's working. But thanks for coming. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
I had a question. You mentioned that D127 was a local leader in CTE.
Yeah.
And I'm a football fan, so I hear that acronym and
Sure.
I think chronic
Yeah.
traumatic encephalopathy.
Not that CTE. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Are laughing.
That is good. That is
Could you
good
help
call.
me with that one?
I coach football too, so I could. But no, career technical education. So at the District 127, they have the most career pathway endorsements in Lake County, Illinois, where you can actually get that on your high school diploma when you leave, and that shows demonstration of mastery in a certain area. So basically, they have 7 different endorsement areas like technology, health, manufacturing, trades, business, education. The list goes on, and then everything's subcategories. So.
Thank you for coming tonight, and I just have similar comments. Just really appreciate all you're doing and the vision that you're providing, because that seems important and needed throughout our world. And I'm excited to hear all that you're doing for early childhood education and the way that you're sharing. It sounds like a lot of opportunities and grants that are available to all the districts in Lake County, so thank you.
And I'll say the last thing before I go. You do have an amazing team, just so you know. I mean, Dr. Glickman, Ms. Gluck, all the way down to Adam over there, Chris, just great people, just so you know. So I really appreciate getting to learn from them too and work with them because they do have the best interests of kids. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Dr. Carner. That brings us to board reports for the evening. We can start down here this evening. Mrs. Albert.
Yeah, I get I wanted to thank the Frederick staff for the family literacy night recently. We read A Long Walk to Water, parents that participated, and another book that I can't remember the title of, sorry. But they also arranged for 2 speakers from South Sudan, Peter and Gabriel, and it was really wonderful. I love literacy programming and making sure we're getting families reading together. So thank you to the staff who put that together. Got to experience 2 concerts last night from Fred Vinia all the way up to high school. Again, beautiful music programming in our district, and it was great to see high schoolers who used to be 5th graders performing, and to see all that growth is amazing. It made me think about systems thinking, how the diversity in sound and what unique individuals bring is one input, but then many inputs, and then the output depends on, it creates harmony and beautiful music together. And then that got me thinking about diversity in thought and collaborating. Tamika and I have been collaborating with a librarian, someone from CLC, and someone from the Heritage Center, and we are excited and hope that you've saved the date for June 19th, 5 p.m. And then last thing I wanted to share, I think I mentioned last time that I went to the Lake County Green Fair hosted at University Center and bumped into many educators and people doing exciting and positive things across our county. And someone we met that day reached out to me about some educational programming that he can tailor to groups. He works with a group that builds support in Congress for national bipartisan solutions to climate change. And so a couple of, and I was thinking maybe we want to think about or consider inviting this group to work with the task force that Jim is on with the mayor, because then it would bring, well, one of the sessions that he offers is a review of recent legislation and climate action at the federal level. And the session can cover opportunities for local organizations such as park districts, municipalities, us to benefit from incentives and work together. So if you want more information about this, I can email it, but just wanted to throw that out there. I like systems thinking, bringing the different silos together. So, thanks.
None from me tonight, thanks.
First, an update, the task force that you were mentioning. They have a tentative first date of July 13th. So I'm pretty sure I'm in town that day, so I should be able to attend that without an issue. The second thing I wanted to do is, you know, I realized as I walked out of here at the last meeting that I didn't actually say anything about, you know, the nice words that everybody was saying. So I'd like to say thank you for all the nice words you had to say about me while I was president and vice president. And thank you for the gifts that you gave me. They were very thoughtful, and I appreciate them. So thank you.
I just have 2 celebrations. I know the band we watched the band video at the last meeting, but since then, they won Music at the Parks, which is really music in a gym kind of by the park, but it was great. And it was phenomenal to just hear, even at that one, I feel like they had gotten their nerves out from state, and they were just great, just amazing. And they won the Esprit de Corps Award for citizenship and kindness in behavior. So I thought that was fantastic. And I also, since Ms. Dalton was here, wanted to thank her for taking 7th graders out of the building, which in and of itself. Yes, but thank you for getting kids out of the classroom and into the world to do science. It sounded like a really, really fun day. Oh, and I do want to say just another plug for the Pride Parade in Grays Lake, June 11th. Please join us. It's going to be a really good time.
I'll piggyback on the music enjoyment. I got a chance to enjoy the concert, the choir concert. Was it last week now at Frederick, I think, which was wonderful to always be part of. And I know last week was Appreciation Week, but we didn't have a board meeting last week. So I want to make sure, you know, in addition to all the messages you got, you know, and hopefully watched, a huge thank you to everyone that makes D46 what it is. It's just an incredible community. You know, my children come home every day with ideas and questions. They're thinking about the world. My son is with Miss Dalton here and will come home every day with a different question, a different response to something, a different inquisitive piece. And that doesn't happen unless you're in a place where you feel safe and where you feel that you can challenge the things around you and also learn. And so, you know, here in a meeting as well as everywhere in the school, I want to thank you. And it's just amazing to see that growth. Thank you.
So at our last meeting, I took a quick poll after the meeting and heard that 2 of you wanted full presentations and 2 of you wanted just digestible chunks, and I wasn't able to connect with everyone, and then 1 person was fine with either one. So this is hopefully this will be a happy medium. I mentioned that I'm in the middle of a master's program and looking at sustainability and learning how we can reduce our greenhouse emissions and protect our students and our neighbors and everyone we care about from the challenges that climate change is bringing us now. So in June, we're going to have a policy meeting, and then we're also going to hear options for our renovations. So I have been combing through a lot of our policies and looking for where sustainability shows up and what things we might want to consider. And there are 3 policies in particular that I think might be worth taking a second look at the policy meeting. The first is 4150, the Facility Management and Buildings Programs. And in one of the standards, it advises us to provide not only for low maintenance costs, but also energy efficiencies and minimal environmental impact. So it might be worth our while to figure out what we mean by that and what we're going to monitor. And 470 is resource conservation. That also has multiple parts. I've focused on the reduction of solid waste because we've decided to develop benchmark baseline information for that by June 2024. It might be thrown off a little bit if we're doing renovations in the middle of that. So just thinking about our waste stream, but it also asks us to investigate the feasibility of potential markets for recyclable materials that are present in the waste stream. The third one is the environmental quality of buildings and grounds, and that one focuses on risks associated with hazardous materials. Something we might want to think about is furniture that's made out of pressed wood emits something called PFAS. These are forever chemicals. They do not break down ever in our systems, and our kids absorb them and we absorb them. So it might just be something that we want to think about as we consider options for furniture in particular. And then the environmental quality of the district's buildings and grounds. And finally, the school code prescribes environmental literacy and is pretty explicit about what we need to expose our children to, given that they're going to be living through climate change. Next slide, please, Brandon. So some options that we might want to learn more about or ask about when WOLD is here in June. There are 3 things that we could specifically do that would help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The first is ask about embodied carbon. Concrete in particular is a construction material that's the 2nd largest emitter. And don't quote me on this number, but I believe construction is, I want to say it's between 6 and 8% of total global emissions. So we also might want to think about low emitting materials, not just the desks and furniture, but also the paints, the carpet, the drywall, all of it emits, it can emit some pretty toxic substances, again, that our kids are particularly vulnerable to, and there all are alternatives. So we might just want to be intentional about that. And then we've decided to focus on composting, so we might want to require the options to have composting infrastructure as well. In terms of compensating for the increases in greenhouse gases that will definitely happen as a result of our renovations, we can look at something called carbon offsets. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but it can be as simple as planting trees, and that can offset some of what we're going to emit into the atmosphere. There's also something called extended producer responsibility. So a simple example of this is if we order desks and they come in cardboard and foam, we can send the cardboard and foam back to the manufacturer instead of paying for the haul away waste. Just a way that we can control our waste stream. We could also consider net zero buildings and grounds and technology buildings. If we have walls and dirt floor right now with no heat, it might be worth our while to have a net zero building that we could house our buildings and grounds people, but it could be a multi-use building too, because those can be field trips, local field trips that are walkable, where students can take a look at how net zero buildings work. And the district office also would be an option for that, as well as the technology building. And then greenhouses on every school campus. One of the ways, greenhouses and growing our own food is a really good way to establish what's called a synergy, because it reduces greenhouse gases. We don't have to incur the transportation costs, both emissions and dollars, for having food delivered to us, but it also sequesters carbon and it pulls carbon out of the atmosphere. I attended a webinar about, so it was the Better Buildings for Everyone, how federal funding can support building performance services planning and implementation. There's so much money out there right now for districts. Specifically, the Renew American Schools program has, I think one program is $500 million to promote the implementation of clean energy improvements in K-12 public schools. There's an energy justice mapping tool for schools that we can use, as well as financing efficient and healthy retrofits. And those are programs, so within those, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of information, there's a lot we could incorporate. And the benefit of that then is our taxpayers don't have to pay twice, because this is federally funded. These are federally funded grants that, if we pursued, might help alleviate the burden on our residents. Next slide, please. So this was really tricky. The IPCC report is huge, and so I by no means am trying to simplify this. There's just so much underneath this, but I did the best I could. So what the IPCC report says, and that's the International Panel for Climate Change, made up of scientists from all around the world. It's a very credible scientific initiative, if you will, as an understatement. But what they're asking for and what they're saying is necessary is a 50% global reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030 and net zero operations by 2050. And they give kind of the worst case scenario, which is pretty honestly terrifying. I'm not going to go into that, but they also give an option of what will happen if we are successful. And that's a much more hopeful scenario, so I'll share that with you. Globally, we'd have increased heat no matter what. We've got 97 years of industrial coal burning, fossil fuel dependence in our atmosphere, so it's going to get hotter. But we could, if we make some of these changes now, our air could be purified by green infrastructure envelopes, is what they're talking about around cities and also around schools and in neighborhoods. Local food distribution center systems, increased reliance on renewable energy, like we're already doing with solar, and more collaborative communities. That's globally. And locally, last slide. If we have this 50% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030 and net zero by 2050, locally we would have improved air quality. We would have what's called a reduced heat island effect. Children are particularly vulnerable to heat. So if we have spaces that have shade, for instance, they will be able to be protected from that. Reduced dependence on local taxes, more equitable procurement procedures, because all of these substitutes, like for concrete or furniture, create a market that is available to people who are interested in developing those alternatives. We could have also reduced exposure to PFAS, which is a forever chemical present in not only in the desks, but in our food wrappers and food packaging, pressed wood, and it's linked to several health problems, including things like high cholesterol or wacky cholesterol and cancer and asthma and allergies. That was a lot of work to get it all really succinct, so I hope that honors what you gave me permission to share with you. But those are some of the things that I'm learning about, and I hope we can consider in June. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation, Mrs. Miller. I had a couple questions as you were going through the presentation. So when you talk about the carbon offsets and tree planting, do you have like a partnership or like an initiative in mind to like kick something like that off the ground, or is this something you'd like us to just think about? And the reason why I asked that question is because I do know a Lake County organization that has a 2-year commitment to what's called Arbor Days, where they go out around Lake County to communities that express interest to plant trees. So my question is this something that you're just like, is it informational, or are you looking for an opportunity to jumpstart something like that?
I would absolutely love to jumpstart something. The Living Schoolyards Act, I think I've mentioned that before, is in Congress right now, has been proposed. So there's funding that may come our way for that express purpose. But yeah, I would love to connect with that. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And then you talked about there would be a reduction in food delivery costs. So how are you thinking about this in terms of, are you thinking like we could get cost savings from our vendor, like Arbor, for example, if we are growing locally some things, we don't have to then purchase that through a vendor?
There's a few different ways I'm thinking about it, but initially my thought was because of emissions, there is, the IPCC report is saying that we will likely have interruptions to our food supplies. So if we have greenhouses or gardens or anything on each of our campuses, school campuses, we will have local food distribution centers for food. So that was my initial thought, is that it would provide food. Am I answering your question?
So more so like protecting us from a scarcity situation, if you will, not so much to offset our spend with our current food service provider.
So whenever I'm thinking, I'm like the worst case and then the best case, and where's the Venn diagram?
Okay.
So that's the worst case. The best case is that it's just healthier food options, and I know that's been a priority for us, is how do we make sure our kids are have access to healthier foods and healthier food options. We did that with Grab and Go at a very small scale. So that's kind of the best side of it, and then reducing costs and emissions, sequestering carbon. There's a lot going on federally too and around the country with living schoolyards. So there's a whole lot of precedent for that. So it's all of that. It's like the whole food system.
Okay. All right. So we have to decide which part of the food system we want to start with, right?
Right,
to not
right.
boil the ocean.
Exactly. And again, if we have plants in our schoolyards, it reduces the amount of pesticides that our kids and we are exposed to. It increases shade. It reduces energy costs because it reduces the heat island effect. So there's a whole bunch of wrapped up in that.
Actually, that's my last question. With regards to the heat island effect, you talked about like the reduction, the targets around 2030 and 2050. And my question is, do you have a sense for what that would mean to D46? Like what would you be, I know there's that 50% out there, right? And I believe that's a global number.
That is a global, yeah.
What are you projecting from a D46 impact?
So that's really hard to answer because we don't have baseline information yet. So once we have baseline, are you asking for a number? Like what does that mean for us?
What are you looking to target? Like, what's our North Star? What are you trying to achieve for us with all this?
Right now, just the direction that we're gonna make a very explicit, concerted effort to reduce our waste stream. Anything we do in that direction contributes to that global reduction.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, last but not least. So just a couple things for me. First, I wanted to thank the citizens of our district that came out as part of our community meeting earlier this week. This built upon the conversations we've been having, the community meetings with our architect, excuse me if I can speak, and just to start thinking about, how we would want to go about prioritizing things that are important to our district and having community input. So I just want to thank those folks that came out as part of that Citizen Task Force Committee. It's a time commitment. I really appreciated the engagement and energy and candor of the group to really give us some things to think about as we look to grow forward. Next, I wanted to remind everybody that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm looking at Dr. Lorenzo in particular because I know the due diligence that you put into SEL for our students here in our district, and I want to thank you, but also remind everyone, to take time to care for yourselves. The work that we put in to make sure we move as one district, one D46 is important, but also take the time to, nourish yourself and fill your cup up as well. And then last but not least, Dr. Mack was talking about just the inspiration and excitement that he sees from his children when they come home for what they're learning in the classrooms, and it just sparked something in me, because I know last year as a board, we made a concerted effort, an investment in curriculum materials, and I'm trying to think of the exact name, and it's just escaping me, culturally responsive curriculum. And I do believe that the curriculum is yielding a lot of fruit, and I too see that in my home and with my children, and just some of the subject matter that they're learning, they're surprised, right, of the things that they're learning, and just about just the diversity in people and subject matter that they're learning. It's helped them to feel more inclusive and more seen in their classrooms. So I am thankful for this board, and also to our curriculum team that brought forward such a rich and robust selection for us to invest in, because it really is yielding fruit. So thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. This brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr.
Sure.
Workman.
We'll start with Dr. Woke, sharing information about our retirees.
Thank you. While Brandon pulls up the slide, we have a few retirees that will be leaving our district this year, and we wish them nothing but the best. Just want to quickly go through them and identify who they are, where they work. I'm not going to name the dates that they started, but it's up there for you to see. First off, Eileen Allenstein, Administrative Assistant at GMS, Cindy Biddier, Secretary at Frederick, Mr. Tim Bories, PE teacher at GMS, Mr. Detweiler, principal here at Frederick School, Rhonda Fry, 7th grade teacher at GMS, Anna Geyer, she's a bilingual teacher at Avon, Susan Hansen, reading specialist at Prairie View, Gayla King, she's personally one of my favorite 6th grade teachers here at Frederick, Roxanne McClyman Schmidt, occupational therapist at Early Childhood, Patty Pays, special education teacher at Park Campus, Deb Sutton, a multilingual teacher at GMS, Cheryl Tedness, administrative assistant here at Frederick, and Linda Weisenberg, a floating secretary, so you'll see her all over the district. So congratulations to them. We wish them the best of luck, and thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Let's give them a hand. And we'll be celebrating all those folks next week at a district-wide retirement event. By the way, we're talking about retirement now because I'm not sure if you know, but school is ending soon. So we'll be talking about some things regarding that in a moment. But I'll be handing this off to Chris Wildman, who's got 3 topics for us briefly.
All right, so the first one is the district has launched a student activity donation button that will be available on the district's website. The donation button will allow community members and parents to provide a helping hand to CCSD 46 to take part in extracurricular activities, and all donations will be tax deductible. That's my first one. The second one is IASBO. Adam and myself attended the Illinois Association of School Business Officials IASBO annual conference on May 2nd through the 5th. And it was held in beautiful Peoria, Illinois. I was able to attend many sessions, which included legislative updates from attorneys and advocates, managing capital improvement programs, food service updates, very relevant to us, and school security. I was also fortunate to present at the conference with 2 other business managers. The presentation was called The Art of External Communications. The presentation looked at effective ways to communicate during a referendum, making capital improvements, establishing a new program such as dual language in a district, as well as during a violent critical incident. Mr. Halpern also presented twice, I believe, and he can tell you about his experience in his presentations.
Mr. Wildman, thank you very much. Yes, over the course of 2 days, I was able to attend 5 different sessions, two of those in which I did happen to present at. One happened to have been on future leaders for the facilities management, how to bring up new facilities managers, how to keep them engaged within it. Also along those lines, did a little bit of pushing on our programs that we teach, the CPMM, the CPS. I also previously went to the IASBO Leadership Institute, so I gave a little insight on that as to what it could do for facilities. But along with that, a couple of the ones that I went to happen to have been in regards to dealing with other leaders within your institute and how to present yourself and how to deal with people along the lines of, because you might not always get along with everybody. So it was really, really encouraging to see. And also another one that I went to was in regards to people who move up the ranks throughout, from teachers to principals to HR to superintendents, and how teams react to it. It was a very well done conference all around.
Thank you, Adam. And the final one is, I'm really, really, really happy to talk about this one. This is something which has been very dear to me when I joined the district, when I had a vision for some of the things that we do. This is the second award that we're being awarded from ASBO International. It's their ASBO International Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. What's that, you might ask? It's an annual award that they give to school districts for your ACFA. So this beautiful thing that we produce every year, but from our auditors, we don't have to do this. We don't have to do a comprehensive report. The state asks us to only do an annual financial report. We have produced for the first time an annual comprehensive financial report, which allows us to take part in this program. And we've successfully been awarded it for the first year. So I'd like to ask our finance controller to come and present it to the board. And the reason I'm asking him to do it is because he does the majority of the work in it. So this is in addition to the budget award from ASBO International, which we've received for 2 years in a row. And we have another award on the way. We haven't received it yet. We are trying to for a third one, which is from the GFOA. And they're the three that I've wanted to get since I arrived here. So we're 2/3 of the way, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Waldman, and thank you, Marco Maddock. Thank you so much. All right, and Mrs. Gluck, if you would talk about our summer programs.
Sure, I'm happy to. Good evening, everyone. We've been working to prepare for 3 summer programs that will all be housed at Park Campus this summer. So we have our Bridges program, our Adelante program, and extended school year, so ESY. And our coordinators have been working tirelessly to hire staff. I believe we are fully staffed at this point for our summer programs, which is fantastic. We're finishing up all the arrangements for transportation, and families will be receiving notification within the next week about all of that information. So we're ready to roll and excited about what's coming this summer for our students.
Thank you. And as I mentioned earlier, the year is wrapping up. We counted recently, I believe we have 9 days left. But board, as you probably know, there's no such thing as really winding down. You've heard me say it before. We race all the way to the edge of the cliff, and then we try not to fall off of it. Our teachers are doing an unbelievable job with that, and I have been spending a lot of time in schools over the past few weeks, and the engagement level of our students is so high, even with beautiful weather outside. As recently as this morning, I started my day over at Meadowview. I went into almost every classroom, I think, and everybody was deeply engaged in learning. It's exactly what you want to see in schools, while all of these fantastic evening events, after school events, things going on at home, baseball games, all of that is also going on, and they are deeply engaged in learning during the school year, and during the school day. So that's that's how we're ending the year, with a lot of positivity. And finally, I'm going to ask Dr. Mack, I know I've already asked you once about rearranging the agenda, but I have even more rearrangements I want to ask for, because we have a team of teachers here to speak, and it's almost 8 o'clock. We've been at this thing for an hour and a half already. And that engagement I mentioned earlier, a minute ago, they're doing it in the morning again. So I'm wondering if we could, this is kind of what I was thinking, if we could go right into new business next, and then even flip what we have in new business and do the K-8 science resource recommendation. Yeah, and then just finish new business and then just kind of go from there. Yep. Can I take this for you? Yeah.
All right, so we're going to bounce down to new business, and then I'll come back to the consent agenda. We'll do the K-8 science resource recommendation first.
All right, well, good evening again. We are here this evening to talk about our K-8 science material recommendation for just some discussion. And you're going to hear about the process that we went through and used to determine this recommendation, and then more information about the resource that we're bringing to you. It is on display back here as well, if you want to take a look at it later. And I do have some of our science planning and design team here this evening with me, and so as they come up this evening to, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves as well. Although we could just start with that. Why don't we just have you introduce yourselves?
Amanda Woodruff, Teaching and Learning Coordinator. Jenny Ursler, I am an 8th grade science teacher at the middle school.
Becky Wilson, 1st grade teacher at Meadowview.
Anna Dalton, 7th grade JMS.
Oh, there we go. All right. All right, so the recommendation of this resource very closely aligns to our mission. And so as we're thinking about this, and you're going to hear more throughout the presentation, but we're going to be talking about how this resource in particular very much empowers our learners within the classroom. And through exploration and developing a deep understanding, it creates equity for all of our learners and cultivates community as students learn also about how science relates to real world experiences, which will help to support them in life moving forward. So I want to talk for a moment just about our strategic plan goals and our board policies that this aligns to. You can see them all listed up here. Our curriculum goal number 1 absolutely aligns to, and specifically within that curriculum goal 1, it states that we will form a science PDT and review potential resources. So that's what we're doing. And then you can see it also aligns with our finance goal number 3 and then board policy 6:40. So I want to talk a little bit about the science planning and design team. You're going to hear it referred to as PDT. You know we like acronyms. So as we started off the year, we sought out some volunteers, some staff volunteers to be part of this committee. We wanted representation from all different classrooms, all different buildings, and different grade levels. That from those volunteers, we created that PDT. Throughout the school year, we held multiple meetings, and at those meetings, we revised our science vision and belief statements for the district. Those had already previously been developed, and we went back and looked at how do we want to update those and revise those based on our new mission statement, as well as looking more deeply at NGSS. We also developed that PDT, and solicited information and feedback from staff. So they created a needs assessment that you're going to hear about, and that needs assessment that was aligned to the vision and beliefs, then was anyone who teaches science in the district completed that. So that then helped us to do the work to create a rubric in order to look for what do we want to rate these programs and resources around. As we looked at different programs and resources that were available out there, we chose 10 to hear presentations from those publishers and from the vendors. From those 10, and you're going to hear more about those, we then narrowed that down to 6, had more in-depth presentations. We made some reference calls to districts that are actually utilizing these resources, and then from there, we were able to narrow it down to a recommendation to bring to you today. The PDT members are listed here, and these are all of the members, as you can see, the representation from all grades and all schools who worked extremely hard on the work to get to this recommendation, and we would just like to publicly thank them for their hard work and dedication to bring everything to you today. And we do have some members, as I shared, with us tonight. And Jenny, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll keep clicking.
Okay, so I am just going to kind of go over that vision and belief that the PDT started out developing in the very first meeting. So we worked to revise, as Amy said, our vision based on best practices. This became part of what drove the rest of our search. We wanted to make sure that whatever we chose was whatever resource we were going to recommend worked with what our vision of science instruction is for D46. So we want to promote natural curiosity of all of our learners, provide opportunities that align to all parts of the next generation science standards, that science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and the cross-cutting concepts. We also want science to relate to the real lives of our students and have them solving real-world problems. For our beliefs in science instruction, we also believe that science should be an inquiry-based and hands-on. It's important that students are actively involved in the science. They're reading, they're acting, behaving, thinking, and writing like scientists. We believe that providing these kinds of experiences will not only get our students excited about science, but will also engage them in their learning more.
All right, so after we revised our vision and beliefs for science instruction and reviewing the results from the science needs assessment, we received information from 10 K-5 science resources and 8 6-8 science resources for the PDT to review. After an initial exploration of the resources, the PDT invited 6 K-5 programs and 4 6-8 programs in for an initial first round presentation. Each program was given the same amount of time to present to the team and graded on the same rubric. The PDT members submitted scores for each program, rating in each of the 4 areas of NGSS design, NGSS instructional support, monitoring student progress, and resources and supports. And then based on those ratings from the first round, the next round was chosen. So 3 programs for K-5 and 3 programs for 6-8. Then those programs were invited back for a second, more in-depth presentation to the science PDT. And again, each of those was scored on that same rubric. So going into this work, we knew several things. We knew that our previous adoption of STEM scopes back in 2017 was no longer going to fit our needs due to its lack of support for multilingual learners, special education students, and lack of use of phenomena, which is a huge part of NGSS. We also knew that whatever resource we were going to recommend needed to come in both English and Spanish, and if it could provide support in any additional languages, it would be a huge plus. We also knew that when it comes to any resource, nothing is going to be perfect. Professional development is always going to be important. And we know that we will ask our teachers to utilize the new resource for the majority of science instruction year 1. We know there's always a learning curve with anything new, and that we may need to go slow to go fast, meaning year 1 might look different, but we will support our staff and work through any hiccups that may come with new implementation, that may come with change.
Having said all of that, we are pleased to share that we're in a wonderful but unique position where all the grades are recommending the same resource, Twig Science. While it was not in the criteria that we meet the needs of K-8 with one program, this is an advantage that will create continuity of instruction across our system in the area of science instruction. We wanted to share some of the feedback of the PDT members about why they felt Twig is the best choice for our students. Take a minute just to read some of that feedback that the PDT members shared. The overall consensus was that Twig is a hands-on, phenomena-based program that asks students to become the scientist and explore various topics throughout the school year. It is engaging and inquiry-based. It provides wonderful STEM enrichment opportunities for our students where appropriate, and it also provides support for all students, multilingual students and culturally diverse students, special ed students, and accelerated students. It is easy to navigate for both students and staff, and we are very excited for the possibility of future of science in D46.
Okay, so how does Twig meet our needs? So you heard from the teachers in the previous slide, but it also does meet the 3 dimensions of science, not like the 3D glasses you watch a movie with, but the 3 dimensions of the next gen science standard. So those are the cross-cutting concepts, the science and engineering practices, and the disciplinary core ideas. So the cross-cutting concepts are the students explore connections across 4 different domains of science. There are 7 cross-cutting concepts. Those are patterns, cause and effect, scale, proportion and quantity, systems and system models, energy and matter, structure and function, stability and change. Then we have the science and engineering practices, or SEPs, and those highlight the methods that scientists and engineers actually use as part of their work. You might think of it as the scientific method. If you're thinking back to maybe your high school science class, we now think of those as the science and engineering practices. And then we have the disciplinary core ideas, which is our content knowledge. So life science, earth and space science, physical sciences, and engineering, technology, and application of science. Twig is also inquiry-based. It has scientific literacy, which is a huge piece of what we want our science program to be. It has STEM enrichment activities. It has multilingual supports, not only in Spanish, but it has additional language opportunities for students who might need those. And it also has supports for enrichment and for remediation. Twig also meets our needs by having a huge chunk of the time investigating phenomena. So the students will spend their time doing science, investigating phenomena, and we have a very quick little short video on how Twig uses phenomena as a base across all grade levels.
There should be sound.
Phenomena are simply observable things that happen, especially when those things make us wonder or ask questions. Phenomena are everywhere around us, but some are easier to spot than others. Dramatic examples of natural phenomena include lightning, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and tornadoes. But there are lots of examples of everyday phenomena that we sometimes take for granted. Light reflecting in a mirror, soap bubbles, or the simple fact that gravity allows us to walk on the surface of the Earth. Some phenomena occur very slowly and can be hard to notice, such as the passing of the seasons or the erosion of mountains. But they are observable events that we as scientists can investigate, understand, and explain. In Twig Science, every module is centered around what we call a module anchor investigative problem that drives student learning. Students work to define, investigate, and explain a real-world phenomenon relevant to the topic of the module. Students engage deeply with the module anchor phenomenon across several weeks of instruction as they generate questions and construct explanations of it. Phenomena-based instruction allows students to use their experiences of investigating specific phenomena to build up science skills and knowledge. It gives students tangible, interesting examples of science in the real world, helping them to understand what they see in the world around them, and experiencing directly why science matters and how they can make a difference.
So, Twig Science has several different program components. One of the main program components is obviously the student materials. So, the student edition, it's called a Twig Journal. It's an interactive journal. It's available in both English and Spanish. Again, there are those additional supports in other languages for students who may need them. Students can access the digital Twig Journal format through a student platform that also includes all the multimedia resources that will bring the phenomena to life. Students at grades K-3 will have print editions in addition to the digital platform to support their learning. We also have the teacher supports, which are a full digital platform with access to the teacher edition and all of the multimedia resources, professional learning, and assessments. Teachers also have access to the student Twig Journal as well in the form of a flip book on the digital platform. The flip books are assets that have been referenced in the correlations to the rubric documents that were submitted to the teachers for review. Hands-on is addressed in two ways in the third component, through consumable and both non-consumable lab kits and digital interactives. For the consumable kits, there are replenishment kits that are available in subsequent years. And then Twig also includes what they call a bonus tool. It's a little video maker space that allows students to produce high-quality videos quickly and easily without any prior knowledge of any sort of video editing, and they can use this video maker space while they take on any sort of the three-dimensional science challenges that are in Twig. So along with any new implementation comes professional learning. So should the board approve our recommendation to move forward with Twig, we plan on giving staff the opportunity to attend one of 2 training sessions either in July or August. These training sessions are virtual and for 3 hours apiece. There will also be monthly staff meeting time devoted to Twig implementation, as well as embedded classroom support from our instructional coaches. Additionally, we plan on having some job-alike release time prior to each of the units being implemented in the classroom. This was actually recommended to us by some districts that we've spoken to that have already been using Twig. They used release time with their teams prior to each new unit during the first year of implementation and found a lot of success with that. And so in talking about possible implementation, we thought this was a great idea and would like to kind of model that after those districts that have used that framework. Furthermore, we plan on using ongoing support from our ROE reps regarding overall NGSS best practices, as well as utilizing the support Twig offers to the fullest extent. Finally, we have made contact with a few districts who have been using Twig, and they have been so helpful to this point and have offered to continue the conversations and assist if we are able to implement this next year. Also, knowing that there are certain policies and initiatives that are important to our school district, we want to know that any company that we choose to partner with also have the same values that we do. So Twig Science is owned by a company called Imagine Learning. Twig Science and Imagine Learning have a very strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. They feel a responsibility to create equitable educational experiences that help all students become academically successful, independent learners, and use the principles of inclusion, representation, accuracy, and perspective as the foundation for all of their products. A diverse team of content experts, educators, and instructional course designers work deliberately to create standards-based content and curricula accessible and relatable to all students' lives and interests. TWIG, Science, and Imagine are also committed to reduce their impact on the environment. As a company, they have established efforts to promote sustainability and encourage recycling of materials. They continuously review their sustainability programs and look for ways to reduce their footprint.
All right, so I get to talk about the fun stuff. I'm going to talk a little bit about the costs here. So you can see the overall cost on the screen there for our students in grades K-8 is that $634,130. I will tell you that this cost is significantly lower than where the initial quote came in to us from the vendor. And an example of costs that were removed included shipping costs, which initially totaled over $136,000. So we worked to bring this to a very much more reasonable cost for our district. We are focused on digital materials, as you heard, for both students and staff for several reasons. One is that it does reduce costs and it is sustainable over time. The cost for the resource includes a one-time fee for 6 years of digital access for both students and teachers, a one-time purchase of science kit bundles, which is part of those consumables and or is the non-consumable part, one-time purchase of essential science kit that's grades 3-5. That is not something that any of the other grades needed. It's just part of the program for grades 3-5. You'll notice also a one-time purchase for middle school common items, which is grades 3-6. And then we do have the consumables, which are some of those printed materials in both English and Spanish for grades K-3. I do want to stress that the majority of the cost is a one-time purchase fee for the next 6 years, similar to ELA. So we would pay this now, and then we wouldn't have to pay most of those costs for a while, for 6 more years. The ongoing costs will be any consumable items and ongoing professional development, but it would be significantly lower than this cost and can be determined on a year-to-year basis, similar to our current science materials order. So we can see what was used and what needs to be replaced. So I want to talk about where the funding sources are for this. So the cost of this will come from several sources. You notice that we do still have some remaining ESSER 3 funds that were allotted specifically for science purchase of these materials. We also have some funding from both this year and next year's local teaching and learning budget. And then in addition to that, we have Title III funds, EBF funds that will help to support our Spanish materials as well, which will lead us to that final number there. So I want to talk about what are the next steps from us. Materials will be on public review until June 7th. And so if anyone would like to contact Amanda at the district office to set up an appointment, they are welcome to do so to review the materials. June 7th, we will request the approval for purchase of these materials. And then within the month of June, should you approve this purchase on June 7th, then we would also start doing the disposal of our old materials and actually repurposing of some of those materials for some of the cotton balls and pipe cleaners and things that are still can be repurposed and used for other things within our buildings. And then upon approval, we would submit purchase orders and plan for material delivery over the summer. And then over the summer in July and August, as Amanda talked about, we would have those professional development opportunities and receive our materials. So we are super excited about this recommendation that we're bringing to you tonight, and our students will benefit from the robust resources that are focused on deep learning aligned to our next generation science standards. And it's interesting tonight that we will bring this to you, given that we heard from Science Olympiad, and we're recognizing Science Olympiad this morning, or earlier at the beginning. It was not this morning, feels like it at this point. earlier in the meeting, so it just aligns very closely to what we're doing here. So, so now I'm going to turn it to you for any questions or comments that you might have.
First, you answered one of my questions that I had, is when was the last time we upgraded the curriculum? But I guess the biggest question I have is, what part of this program is so different that set itself above the rest of the ones that you evaluated?
Yeah. I know some of our science teachers, I'm sure, can jump in a little bit here too, but I would say really just the way that they engage our students in the exploration and discovery and observation and the types of conversations that it's leading students to have are just so incredibly deep. And it provides an opportunity for students to be able to engage in this real world connection to what on a deeper level than our current program has been. The other piece that set it apart is the piece of that it had not only Spanish materials, but it had materials in multi-language, many of our languages. And then also has the opportunity to be able to provide support and extension. So not just looking at anyone who needs remedial support, but looking at that extension piece as well. And that's all built in to be able to help to support our teachers, support our students.
Okay, and the other comment I had was thanks to your team for their work on this.
I'm super curious. It sounds amazing. I want to go back and redo science. And I'm curious about what assessment looks like in a way different learning environment. I'm assuming it also shifts, so just wondering how it shifts.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? I can grab some of these.
So a lot of the assessment, especially in our youngest classrooms, is going to be much more observational. Kids showing what they know, kids talking about what they're learning, and the teacher observing the kids doing science. Even in the upper grades, kids actually doing science and showing what they're knowing, and then maybe writing about science. So it's much more performance-based. I don't know if maybe you all have anything to add?
I will just add a little bit. So it's very much of the taking what they have learned and what we've discussed throughout the whole unit, and then they're applying it to a real life situation. So again, making the connections to the things around them, things that they see, things they've seen, on TV, or it just really is hands-on, making the connections, having them do the thinking and figuring it out.
And then each of these, so this is fourth grade, first grade looks similar, but what it has in there is it has a rubric so that the teachers can really look at what does that mean, where students are within the continuum of understanding, and then can provide instruction based on that. So really, and it gives driving questions to teachers so it can help them to know exactly what they're looking for some of that, and then opportunities for students to explore and write.
Thank you so much for the due diligence you guys put into reviewing and landing on a recommendation for TWIG. I love the idea of maintaining that continuity between K-8. My question is, and I don't know if we've ever done this, so my apologies if we do and I just don't know, but do we engage our partners in D127 when we're considering, moving to something like this? So in my head, I'm thinking about Mr. Somerville, Mr. Williams over in Central, right? And is the material, is the curriculum that we're bringing forward going to be something that they feel like is nicely, like a nice segue as we start to hand our kids off between North and Central?
That is a great question, and we do engage in articulation conversations, and so we had one earlier this year. You were with, no. Sam Duffy was there, thank you. But we went and had conversation about what is it they're looking for from our students. So when we have that information, that helps us to know where our instruction what our instruction needs to look like to then be able to help prepare our students for that. I had conversation earlier this week with Tracy Landry, who is in my position over there, and we talked about this recommendation and talked about what it offers, and she and I had conversation about that it seems to align specifically to what it is we're looking for our students to know and be able to do as they head over there.
That's awesome, thank you. And I also love that their mission almost sounds exactly like the 46 mission as well.
Yes, they pop up, right? So thank you for your work. I love hearing about inquiry-based instruction. That's exciting to me. I also am thrilled to hear about the connection between real-world experiences and exploration and hands-on learning, and all of that is fantastic. I'm curious, I've been reading a lot as I learn about environmental literacy about youth citizen science, which takes that concept of exploration and makes it very local. So I'm wondering if there are opportunities to make instruction hyper-local. So it's the kids' schoolyard or the kids' neighborhood or whatever, as opposed to a picture of another.
I mean, I think there are definitely concepts within the different grade levels in the curricula that do relate to what can we look at outside, what can we look at within our own community. And as we start to learn the resource itself, we're going to know where we can continue to supplement and make those connections. We've already got some here.
I'm just looking at the kindergarten first unit. It's called My Big Nature Adventure. I'm assuming there are some connections in here. Third grade unit 1 is the ultimate playground. I'm assuming there are some connections in here. So absolutely there are some connections we will be able to make.
And I will say, when we had them come in to share a lesson with us, one of the things that, that they're talking about is they were working with us to talk about things like weather, and, those are things that are real, right? So, how do we use that to then think about what's happening around us?
Thank you so much for all the evident care that went into bringing this recommendation forward. This is it's a big and important thing that you guys are doing right now, is the next 6 years of science instruction in our district. It's really big, and thank you for all your work. My question is kind of a more broad question about the nature of curriculum delivery since we last went out for a science curriculum, which was before we had technology in the schools, in the hands of our kids, clearly before the pandemic. What is the general trend about curriculum delivery? We can narrow it to the science world, but in general, like, this seems a lot more technology-based than certainly the current curriculum, right? And that's because of we have technology now and it's post-pandemic.
Yeah, and
so I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think most vendors know now that most students post-pandemic do have access, although this was out prior to the pandemic. So, I think but one of the pieces that we want students to be able to do is to be able to have all of those skills, right? So this is a combination of that digital online piece, knowing how to navigate. I mean, that makerspace portion that Amanda was sharing too, that's teaching kids skills that they're likely going to need no matter what career, right, that they go into. And so thinking about, it's teaching kids how to interact. It has that collaboration piece part of it. So it's teaching some of those skills between students as well as some hands-on, has some literacy based in there as well. So working on some of those literacy skills. And so I think programs and vendors in general have looked at what skills do kids need as they're going to be adults in our society, right? And so I think this is a good balance of all of those pieces.
Follow-up too, right? So, technology is great, but we also want them to get away from the technology too. So I'm glad to hear you talk about the word balance and to make sure that we're not just, focused on the screen and not. It's great that they can go to the screen to give them instruction on how to go out to the real world and engage.
And I will say there were some that were very technology-based that we looked at, that it was a lot of just watching videos and then writing a response. And that's part of what we really liked about this one, is that it had that hands-on piece and really got kids engaged in that, as well as had that technology piece as well. So it's really starting to think about some of that STEM.
To still address that concern, there is a lot of
virtual thing, well, thinking about something. And then there's this discussion, and there's jotting down on paper, there's pencil and paper component. The screen is to prompt, it's like, it's used as a prompt, and then, and then they take it from there.
Mhm.
So definitely
And it had like trailers to start to get kids excited about a unit, like movie trailers.
Their graphics are amazing, because I've seen kids phase it out right away as soon as it's, 2 years old, and they just fall off. The graphics are crisp, they have simulation labs. They can actually do it as a screen thing, but I do this in the classroom now. They do this, and then they discuss it. They turn actually and face each other, and they talk about it, and then they go back. It is a balance in that way, but it's definitely more of a prompt to inspire them to investigate.
So I'm going to give you an example. When they came to, the K-5 came to present to us in our second presentation, they had us engage in an activity. There was the little trailer to get us excited about it. But then it was a second grade lab that they had us do, and it was literally like a plastic beaker filled with water, and each person had to play a role in the activity, and they had to put in different pieces of material to see how much water were they able to hold. So there were things like a piece of wax paper, a sponge, a popsicle stick, and so they were actually looking on the outside of the plastic beaker. Well, how did it change? And so and then they had to discuss it as a group and have conversation about it. And then what did they observe, and what did they notice, and then what did this mean, and what phenomena did it get them to? So.
And I think I was looking from a primary lens, and I really felt like it had a great balance, because I think we've noticed, I know I've talked about it before, that after the pandemic, that all the graphics and all the internet stuff isn't as intriguing to them anymore. And so it does have both of the concepts there, and it's been nice to look at those.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Thanks for your it sounds like months of preparation. Yeah. And it sounds like all the science teachers participated and are excited about it?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure and appreciate that it's project-based, hands-on, and can engage learners of all languages too.
And I'll add my thanks, and I have one question that is not as intellectual as the rest of my colleagues. But I have a very engaged future meteorologist who lives in my home. Can you drive him into a tornado for me, please, on this program, so we can stop asking me to do that? Thank you for all your work. Thank you.
I do have a
I'm
couple.
sure you hear about his questions a lot. So, yeah.
What are the movie trailers might? Yeah.
Not us.
I just had a few additional comments, and actually a point of clarification about all of the teachers being involved. Not all the science teachers were on the PDT, but the members of the PDT were communicating with the teachers, just to clarify. Yeah. Gives them. Yeah, thank you. So just a few other comments. I was listening to you talk, Christy, about how you want to do science, redo science, and I was thinking about it, but through the lens of a teacher. I want to redo science, but as a 5th grade teacher, which is what I used to be, I love teaching science, and I feel like watching you talk and watching it, I want to get my hands in there. So I share your excitement. I keep thinking, I will be. I keep thinking about how a student only gets to do 3rd grade science one time, right? 8th grade science one time. And this brings us exactly what we believe they need. So I'm so excited about that. Teachers, thank you so much for your devotion to this project. And finally, Amy kind of downplayed it, but when she's talking about how she worked with the vendor to bring the price down, Mr. Wildman referred to it as she was beating it with a stick. And one of our members of our cabinet said, if you want somebody with you when you're negotiating for a car, buying a new car, that's who you want. So thank you so much for that, really. All right, thank you all so much. It's late. We understand that you need to go home. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, now we can get back to the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for this evening, including the personnel addendum that was sent earlier today.
Dr. Mack? I'll make that motion, but I do have a comment.
Correction,
a
yeah.
point of discussion.
Yep.
So moved.
Take a second.
I'll second.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. With regards to the 5-3 minutes, the motion to approve and the second for the board secretary did not have names. So we just need to make sure we update who made the motion and who seconded.
Okay.
For the board secretary.
For last time. It's just missing. Yeah, I don't remember who seconded, but it's missing.
I may have.
You may have. It's just missing in the minutes. All right. With that one correction, we have a motion and a second. You can go ahead and vote.
Braden?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
LaCroix?
Aye.
Albert?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
And Weedman?
Aye.
All righty. Motion approved. And that moves us to our action items. Excuse me. The first action this evening is a motion to approve the final 2022-2023 school calendar, which we have to do at the end of each year. We need a motion and a second, please.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussions? Okay.
Weedman?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
LaCroix?
Aye.
And Albert?
Aye.
Motion approved. The next action item is motion to approve the 2023-2024 board meeting calendar, which we discussed last time. Need a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any additional comments? Questions? Okay.
LaCroix? Braden?
Aye.
Albert?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
And Nash?
Aye.
All right, motion approved. And the final action item is a motion to approve the student services program review with the district management group that was presented. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion? All right.
Albert?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
LaCroix?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Nash?
Aye.
And Weedman?
Aye.
Motion moves. Motion approves. Thank you. All right, unfinished business. We have the student activities fee discussion.
That would be me? Okay, so let's just reprise this because we've talked about it a lot. It kind of is the definition of unfinished business because it's unresolved. We've brought it before you. We're bringing it back, but we're not taking action. So it's literally checking all those boxes. Okay, so in November and December, the administration presented our recommendations for facility rental fees, preschool tuition and transportation fees, and registration and technology fees. So those were approved by the Board of Education in January for the upcoming school year. Also discussed at those meetings were the extracurricular fees for the 23-24 school year. At the January meeting, the administration recommended that the action be tabled until May 2023 to allow us to gather more information about the usage of these activities to assist in potentially refining the recommendation from the administration. So here we are bringing that back for discussion. So there are two parts to the discussion we'd like to have with you today. How the fees are assessed, the first point is how the fees are assessed for our free and reduced population, and secondly, the fees themselves. So let's take the first part. The administration has collected information regarding the amount of students that take part in the activities at Frederick, Grays Lake Middle School and Park Campus, and the amount raised for the current fee structure and the total qualified for free and reduced under National School Lunch Program guidelines. So that number's in your board packet. It's 138,000, just call it 140,000, with approximately 1,000 participants. 18% qualify for free, and a further 2% qualify for reduced. So the cost to the district to waive these fees for our free and reduced population would be approximately $32,000. The board chooses to waive student activity fees in addition to the registration fees which are currently waived for that population. This would require an update to board policy 4:140. It would be a minor word difference from press within with the scope of the fees waived the only difference. So we would just add these student activity to the wording in addition to registration technology. So that's the first point of discussion. And then the second one is in terms of the fee structure, the administration is recommending that the student fees for 23-24 remain unchanged for next year, unless you choose otherwise. So they're the 2 points for discussion this evening, to be approved at the next opportunity.
Open the floor for any comments or discussion items.
I'm sure it's late and I'm not understanding, but we're talking about the possibility of waiving the fees for a free and reduced lunch population and separately talking about waiving them all together, and that's the thing that would require a wording change?
No. Okay. I'll just go back. So the two things, there's one action item that needs to happen for next year, and that's the fees themselves. Okay? And the administration is recommending that we make no change for next year. So that will be brought back. What the bigger picture from an equity perspective has been, how do we handle the students that maybe can't afford it, who are on free and reduced? And currently our board policy does not waive those fees. My previous district and Lynn's previous district did, and it was explicitly listed in their board policy 4:140. So if the board wishes to make that change for the next school year, it would require minor word change to that policy.
I'm just going to jump in to say, again, it was so long ago that we talked about this, but the reason that we at that time said, okay, we'll come back in May, is because we needed to collect the information as to how many of our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch were taking part in these activities. Now, we need to note that if the board chooses to waive the activity fees for students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, it could be that there are more children who take advantage of the opportunities, right? That's exactly what would be wonderful. The loss to the district, so if more students took advantage, probably that wouldn't have a financial impact, right? The loss to the district financially is simply that, hey, there's about $32,000 that wouldn't have been collected this year, right? That and that we wouldn't be collecting next year if those fees are waived. The decision that the board needs to make at the next board meeting is the actual fees. And as Chris said, we're not recommending any changes to the fees. We just know that you wanted to think about that in context of whether or not you would be waiving fees for students who receive free and reduced lunch. I also want to point out the following. If you go way back to the beginning of today's meeting, or maybe the middle of the meeting, during the superintendent's report, Chris made mention of a new button that we have on our during registration where people can make a donation towards fees. And we'll start actually next week during a district-wide communication. We'll start advertising for that so that people will know. That money, that collected money, we think would be more likely used, it might offset some of these costs, but it would also be used for students who don't qualify for free or reduced lunch, but who are asking for a waiver nonetheless. And we have an entire process for families that are in that situation. So you know, the board may want to discuss now, do you want to waive those fees moving forward? And this conversation can travel, by the way, into a policy committee meeting, which we're having next week, right? So if you want to hold off and talk about it next week at policy, you can do that.
I have a question. Just to help me kind of prepare for that conversation. So I know this is let's just say 20%, right, between the two. Do we know what our total population is? So if we
I'll
wanted
look
to
it up on
kind
the
of.
report card. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
It would also, again, continuing the conversation, not tonight, but just to look at participation rates, to compare participation rates of, we know the number, but the percentage of students who are in free and reduced lunch who opt in, and this percent of students who aren't, I think that might be an interesting thing to track over time. Because I think that is the purpose, right, is to like to have those percentages be the same as equal as possible. I know it's not math to do tonight, but it just hit me.
Dr. Walk looked it up for me. It's 21%, so our end sample's good because it's exactly that, pretty close.
This at the policy committee meeting then?
So,
Yeah, Mrs. Miller.
So I'm just thinking about feasibility, just wondering where the money's coming from. So if we're gonna spend it on this, which is valuable and worthwhile, but we need to pay for it somehow, so I'm curious where that's coming from.
well, you can look at it like a spend because it's money that wouldn't be collected, right? So when we create a budget, there's the revenue coming in, right, and the expenses going out. So there would be presumably $32,000 less coming in next year. And we'll be honest with you, Chrissy, in a little while, Chris is going to present the first round of budget, and there's a deficit. So that's the truth. Yep.
So really, it's a value decision about do you wish those students and those families to be paying that? It's really what it's about. Completely understand, but that's a prioritization that we have to make. No change is an option. We have to make a decision on the fees, though. The next one.
So maybe we should ask that question because that has to come back for a vote next time. So does anybody have any questions that are specific to the fees? Yes. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. You're just stretching. You're just thinking. Okay. So sounds like you're comfortable with us coming back with the same fee structure at the next board meeting. Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
You can talk about this all summer if you want in policy, right? But the fees will have to get approved. All right, great. All right.
All right, that brings us down to the preliminary budget.
Okay, I'm back. Okay. So first thing, I'm not going to read the memo because it's a lot. But what I am going to do is hopefully add some color or substance to the memo in your board packets. So the administration has been hard at work in building a new budget for the 2023-24 school year. This starts when we approve the tax levy in November, followed by approving student fees. Just been talking about it right now. And we work on our enrollment projections, staffing plans, capital plans, curriculum resource plans, and technology plans. All of these things have two things in common. They relate directly to the strategic plan goals for each department, and they all directly relate to supporting our students and learning. And within each of these plans, which you have seen in various forms over the last few years, are replacement schedules for Chromebooks, new curriculum resources, which we've just discussed this evening, for example, science, as well as upgrades for safety and security and various other things. So lots of planning has gone into the budget and beyond. Dr. Walk presented the administration's staffing plans in detail to the community in March and April. I'm using last year's budget. 58% of the budget is salaries and benefits, meaning people. We are a people business, and a further 14% is for outsourced services, such as bus transportation, food service, and nighttime cleaning. So a total 73% of the budget is human resources related. The new positions that were presented to you for the upcoming school year are needed at a building and classroom level to support students. They included additional teachers, instructional coaches, social workers, student service facilitators, special education teachers, program assistants, a nurse, bilingual interventionists, and all these positions have a direct student contact or improve our teachers who work directly with our students. And all the positions that are in the budget are either currently filled with an individual currently doing the job or are currently posted and will hopefully will be filled. So alongside these plans, the business office meets with all building and departmental leadership. Meetings are participatory and invite leaders to determine their wants and needs for the upcoming school year. I go into more detail in the memo about that process. So last year, we presented a $700,000 deficit. With all the major components in place in this preliminary form, this year we are in a $3.4 million deficit in the operating funds. Just going to stop there for a little bit so we can all breathe. We have an all funds deficit of $5.7 million. This is because we include spending from capital projects as part of the 3-year capital plan, so that's planned, as well as payments from debt service. CCSD 46 is only 65% adequately funded. According to the Illinois State Board of Education, we have a funding gap of $17 million. I know you know this, but it is important to remember this when we are looking at an actual deficit. The last 2 years' budgets have also been deficits, which I've brought to you and you have approved. You might recall something I have said to you in the past about annual deficits. They are a symptom of a structural deficit, not the cause. A one-time deficit budget with sufficient fund balance reserves isn't a structural deficit. However, recurring annual deficits, like we are seeing, need to be addressed with more funding if we are going to continue our work on the strategic plan goals. I look forward to bringing the budget to you in June in tentative form, and then again in August to approve at the hearing. I think one more final thing, I just included this in the last paragraph. The projected actual for this school year is showing a deficit of $700,000, which we anticipate within 2 months to be within that range. So we presented a $700,000 budget, and we think we're going to be at a $700,000 budget. Deficit for this year, an actual. Do I have any questions about what I've discussed or from the memo as presented?
Any comments or questions at this time from the board?
I had 2 things that I wanted to ask you about that might impact our projections. And the one I can remember is probably not the most important one and probably sort of far-fetched, but I was wondering if the Bears decide, to kind of not, or if the Bears get a huge tax break, if that sort of affects the entire EBF, because then that school, doesn't become more fully funded, and it kind of hurts all of us. You know what I mean? Because they don't get the money that they should get, so they stay tier whatever they are. You know what I mean? And it doesn't. So that.
I don't think, we're talking about Arlington Heights and the Bears.
Yeah. So they basically are trying to say that the property that they paid, I don't know, $700 million for is now, for tax purposes, only worth $400 million. And so it just hit me that the more that happens, the less those school districts get, and then the more they continue to rely on EBF.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that was one. That was interesting.
EBF is held harmless from the previous year's
Oh, that's
amount.
true. Yeah,
So
yep,
there's
okay.
that was one of the components.
Yeah.
So whatever tier you are, you're always going to get Okay. Held harmless from the previous year. And that was one of the things that they talked about back in 2017-18, because a lot of school districts which were put in tier 4 were worried that that was going to happen.
Yeah,
So that
okay.
was the compromise to get all the
specifically
rich
to-
districts to agree to say, okay, as long as you don't take my money and redistribute it to the tier 1 districts, we'll be fine.
God
We're in.
forbid. Yeah.
So they're good. So I don't know what tier they're in, but they should be okay.
Okay.
And the dollar amounts that come from that property would actually just get redistributed over the rest of the taxpayers.
Yes, that's true.
Because their assessment wouldn't go down. It would just get spread out farther.
There was another potential impact that I had, that it occurred to me while you were speaking, and I did not write it down, but if it comes to me, I'll ask you.
All right, I know, Pete, you are a processing board, and we appreciate that. We appreciate that you're thinking. I want to clarify that our cabinet has not brought you this deficit number lightly. It's difficult for us as well to be providing this to you. I return to what it is we want for our students and what our students need, and what they deserve. And so we do believe that everything that we're bringing to you in this budget fits directly under that heading. And as Chris stated, it's a structural deficit that we are dealing with, and that we are talking with our community about, right?
So I understand that this is a deficit budget that's initially being put forth. I'm just curious how this budget year looks put against the same year when we were looking at projections, when we were talking about how are we going to fund our strategic plan, and when we started having discussions about what kind of revenue enhancements we might be looking to do down the road. So, and I guess where I'm coming from on all this, as long as we're on that same glide path, like this isn't wildly different from that year's budget in that projection, then I'm not as concerned about it, because this was the plan all along. And I guess I'll leave it there for now, and I'm not looking for an answer right now, but maybe before the next board meeting, or you could have something prepared along those lines, because I think that's an important data point. How does this compare to what we've been kind of pointing at the whole time?
Well, it's bigger. I can start by saying that, because you can, which you know.
Right.
It's the culmination of various things. There's a lot of timing issues that we're being hit with, and I kind of very roughly threw something together, and I can go into, remember that this is just preliminary. We'll have a whole presentation in June. So I can have a slide which can maybe say, hey, this is where we've been spending, and these are some of the timing differences that we have. I can just tell you we have taken advantage of every funding opportunity we've had over the last 2 years to buy our Chromebooks. So 2 years ago, we used ESSA funding. Last year, we had an additional EBF windfall from an error in EBF, and we used both those opportunities to buy our Chromebooks, which is $450,000. We don't have that this year. So that's coming from local resources. That's just a very easy one for me to explain to you. And so I think what we're seeing is when the district really costs out its costs of doing business for a Lake County school district to do the things that it should be doing, we don't have enough money because we only have 65 cents on the dollar.
Well,
thank you,
Johnny, come lately.
Yeah.
But we've been knowing this for a long
Yes,
time.
you've been knowing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And you can get away with externalizing some of those costs.
Well, we
You
did
know,
that.
you've done that.
We've
We've done that.
deferred maintenance. We've deferred
Deferred
all
maintenance.
sorts of things. We've
Exactly.
deferred programming. We've deferred,
Yeah.
we've deferred it all.
I don't want to bring back the entire conversation that was had on, was it Monday? It feels like a week ago. Yeah. Monday. But we were asked the question from a member of the public, said, what should the district be spending on? And I said $3 million. For our an annual capital spend of $3 million per year. And our architect jumped in and said, yes, it's $3 million per year. Your 10-year plan is 27 to 29 to $30 million. And we're not spending that. So there's a reason why we haven't, because we haven't been able to. And so that's just a symptom of it as well. When the district invests in things like brand new ELA that hasn't been invested since 2000 for 15 years, and then we invest in a new curriculum, which is post-COVID for today's students in 2023, it's going to cost, we're going to have to pay 2023 cost prices. We can't go back to 2017 and hope we're going to pay that. So we're just seeing a very large increase of across the board in every service and every supply and every material that we have to invest in as a school district is just highly impacted in an inflationary environment. It's just expensive to do business. It's probably the best way I can describe it to you. It's expensive to run a school district in Lake County.
And it's
Because we
very
have to pay
difficult
Lake
to
County.
raise dollars.
I'm sorry?
It's very difficult to raise dollars when the CPI was a 0.7 and a 0.8 and a 0.2 and all those numbers in between now and, you know, then, right? I mean, our costs for just our personnel was going up 3 and 4%, and our insurance was going up 10 and 15%. Yet we could only increase our revenues through the tax base by 0.7%.
And then we got hit with a 7% CPI that's tax capped at 5.
Right.
So
the
you get
tax
hit
cap
the other
hurts us.
side that you have a narrow amount to which makes complete sense. PTEL's there for a reason.
Yep.
You know, it's to limit the increases of everyone's property taxes. So again, all our vendors are increasing their costs because they have to pay their employees. So we're just in a high inflationary environment. We're paying 2023 costs to run a school district in Lake County. We're competing for all the best teachers we can have. We're trying to have all the best teachers we have to fill those positions because we want them to be filled. And unfortunately, the math, we just can't make the math work. There's just not enough revenue to cover all our expenditures. So that's the high-level version. I will work on a slide that will succinctly, hopefully, explain some of those differences because there's some timing as well, and it's not easy to explain in a memo.
And additionally, is it reasonable to be putting this budget proposal in the context of the previous projections that we looked at when we were talking about how do we fund our strategic plan, how do we fund our capital plan, and how does that all tie into the revenue enhancements we know we need for the future?
I think the best way to answer that is from the position of the process, everything is going to plan. The district needed to approve its strategic plan first and follow through on all the things that we're doing. So a district says aspirationally we wish to be here, and we're going to put all these strategic goals in place. And we don't have the funding for them today, but we're going to start the education process with the community, and we're going to advocate. So the strategic plan is the kickoff, which happened in April of 2021. So there's nothing, the district's doing nothing wrong. It's just we have to go through this little bit of discomfort because we don't have the funding to do all the things that we need to do.
So I want to go back to the board report that I gave earlier. There are several federal grants. There's quite a federal push for energy efficiencies and improvements in infrastructure. So one of them is the Department of Energy launched $500 million Renew America Schools program. So it's directly related to the improvements that we're making. I'm wondering, are we pursuing any of those grants? Do we have a grant writer? Have we considered that to capture some of this federal funding?
I know me and Adam met with somebody from the community. Can you remember who the gentleman was, the lady was?
No, I do not, but I do know the grant that Christy is speaking of there, and I did speak to within our architects and also other mechanical contractors, and in our community and our financial stature, we do not fit it. It's for lower income communities.
I think that's important to remember that when a lot of the legislation gets passed, if it's federal and state, they really look at two things, rural and low income. That's what a lot of the grants that we've looked at, and we didn't qualify for a lot of the buses, whereas rural and low-income districts did. And so they're able so a lot of them to replace a lot of their fleets. So we do look at a lot of these. Unfortunately, restricted grants as well, you have to spend money, you have to do something to get the money back. What this district needs is unrestricted revenue to be able to fund its operating on a day-to-day basis. So what we don't need is additional things to do, because we've got things to do. We just need the money to pay for it, because we're paying for teachers, we're paying for all the other things that we need to do on a day-to-day basis.
I also just wanted to point out that there's kind of a logic gap in terms of how funding works. So we know that our 65 cents on the dollar isn't related directly to having a low-income population necessarily, right? It's related to having very little business in our community, which is something that our community has chosen, right? People live here, many because they don't want to live in a community that has a lot of commercial property. That's why we're 65 cents on the dollar. But those grants that are grant opportunities are often for low-income communities, which may not be tier 1 communities like we are. So there's just this logical funding gap. There's a gap in the logical funding, let's put it that way, which makes it all the more difficult.
And I'm just going to beat with a stick, just going to join in the beating with sticks of the evening, which is also the state does not fund schools like they should. EBF's not fully funded, and our state decided that we should not have a more progressive tax, and that is the source of our issue, because until that changes, we're all fighting for crumbs.
So if there's no further comments, I will prepare that slide for you, and I will prepare the tentative budget presentation for June 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wildman.
Thanks for all the work you put into this.
Yeah, thank you. We have the e-learning report. Yes. Dr. Glickman.
Not saying good evening, we've been here all evening. I actually considered moving this to the next board meeting, but the data for this report comes from the thought exchange that we did with our community, and I would not feel comfortable ending the school year without closing this up, right, and giving information back to the community, which I wanted to do with all of you first. But I can do it quickly and with some summarizing, more than I normally would. So here we go. Oh, we're all having, there we go. Okay, our mission, this is very much about all of these topics. I'm going to move forward right now. So I'll be sharing the results quickly of our recent thought exchange and importantly sharing our next steps. As you know, we recently did a thought exchange asking the question, what successes and challenges did you and or your family experience related to e-learning on February 16th? We only had one e-learning day this year. We wanted to know how it went, what people thought about it, and as you know, capture some ideas about e-learning versus snow days. It was a very, very robustly, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of people engaged, thank you. People really engaged, 535 participants, 466 thoughts, over 10,000 ratings in this thought exchange. So people were pretty interested in being involved. This shows you that the vast majority of people who participated were parents and guardians in our school district, but 12% are also teachers or administrators, and 4% are members of the support staff. This shows you where our participation came from in terms of the schools. And board, you'll be able to go back and look at all of this because I'm going through it very quickly. This is a very important slide. We asked, please identify the extent to which you agree with the statement. I would like CCSD 46 to use e-learning days instead of snow days, as long as ample warning is given for preparation. So 34% of the respondents either strongly disagreed or strongly disagreed or disagreed. 6% were neutral, and 60% agreed or strongly agreed. So the largest percentage of people were agreeing or strongly agreeing that they want the school district to continue with e-learning days. This brings us to the thoughts. So I'm going to go back for one moment. Of those over 5,000 thoughts, they were all themed. And most of them were themed into challenges and successes. Along with that, there were other things that got pulled out, and there were many thoughts that were in more than one theme. What I have for you on these slides are the top comments, so the most highly rated comments in various themes. We're not going to take the time tonight for you to read through them just because of time, but again, board, you'll have opportunity to do this on your own. I'm going to do a quick summary, and I'm sure you're not surprised to know that I'm starting with teachers did a great job, because that came up over and over and over again. In fact, the very top comment on this slide was the top comment for the entire thought exchange, and it says, "I thought that the teachers did an excellent job of pivoting and making the best of it. It is important that we are all doing our best." And it continued to go on from there. I think 2 slides here of positive comments about our teachers, and I actually have already shared this with all of our teaching staff. I wanted them to feel celebrated. They were amazing. So there's another slide of positive comments about our staff. All right, the successes. I'm not going to read through these to you or give you time right now to read through them, but it really runs the gamut of how wonderful our staff was, students feeling engaged, people feeling like they were notified early, people were successfully able to log in. That came up a number of times. And how well prepared the students and the staff were to do this. I'll just read the very bottom one again of these top comments. "Always impressed with how prepared our teachers are to pivot. I imagine is a lot of additional work for them," and indeed it is. And then there are the challenges. A lot of the challenges we'll look at in a moment because there were challenges about special populations. It's a lot of comments about it's challenging for students who are younger students and students who require special supports. And some people just wrote that, it was okay for my family, but it might have been inconvenient for other families, especially if there wasn't a parent who was able to stay home. So there we go. Those are the challenges again. All right, challenges for specific groups. These were more specifically pulled out, but again, it's about the younger students and students who need special supports. Notification. This was a kind of a funny topic. First of all, we acknowledge that notification is important, whether it's a snow day or an e-learning day, right? People need to know the kids are going to be home. If you look through these, you're going to see that there are some people who are saying, well, early notification is best. Please don't wait till 5 a.m. in the morning. That's really hard on our family. I will note that we didn't wait till 5 a.m. on that particular e-learning day. We announced it the day before. In fact, board, you may remember the decision was made right before a board meeting, and we were sending out that information right as the board meeting was getting started. Nonetheless, we have retained the right to not announce it until 5 a.m. the next day, or 5 a.m. of the day, whether it's snow day or e-learning, because we don't necessarily always know what the weather is going to be. There were other people who said, well, you decided too early, and the weather wasn't that bad. So you'll see later there's a comment about how you can't make everyone happy, and we all know that, right? No matter how hard we try. The scheduling learning expectations. So the topic that came up most often under the schedule and learning expectation is that folks felt that there was too much synchronous learning going on. Certainly we had, our plans include some synchronous time and some asynchronous time, but the feedback that we got was there was just too much synchronous time, too much time for students on their Chromebooks, sitting. And then here are thoughts that were stated about, hey, could we just have snow days? Kids love snow days, and I know you're not surprised to see that. So and then there were some miscellaneous thoughts that it can be a lot of extra work for staff. Is it possible to build a snow day into the calendar so that if we need one, we can drop a day later in the spring and still end the year on time? I want to talk about that for a moment, board. I know you're well aware that whenever we bring you a calendar for the next year, it does actually include 5 additional days for emergency use. That stated, everybody thinks the first possible last day of school is going to be the last day of school. But those 5 days do exist. The other thing that sometimes happens in school districts is a district might embed an additional day off that they could then use if need be. So, for example, a school district that chooses to take Casimir-Pulaski Day off might, if there's a snow day or a e-learning day, they might then have school on that day so that they don't have to extend the year. That's not something we've done, but it's something that can also be considered in the future. This brings us to our plans moving forward. Based on that 60% of people saying that they prefer e-learning days, we will continue to plan to use e-learning days in most cases of inclement weather, as long as there's ample notice of preparation. But we will make some changes. Based on that feedback about people wanting even more asynchronous time, we're going to fold that in. So more time for kids to step away from their computers. One of the beauties of doing that is our families that want their kids to go outside and take advantage of the weather can do that. People may be able to use that asynchronous time to do something else and come back to the work later in the day. Maybe they're doing some more of the work in the evening as a family. So we feel like that will give people a little more flexibility, hopefully be able to make more people happy, even though we can't make everyone happy. And finally, it is possible that if we have several days of inclement weather in a school year, we might have a snow day instead of an e-learning day now and again, especially because of our younger learners who have more difficulty with it and our students who receive special support. So we want to make sure that we are acknowledging that that's difficult as well, and we want to be attentive to that. So I will be sharing this information out with our community in a communication next week, but I did want to know if the board had any questions or comments.
I just have a question about inclement weather. How do we define that in our district? What does that,
right.
that mean?
So typically it's significant snow or it's cold. And as I've shared before, regardless of whether it's going to be a snow day or an e-learning day, the decision to not have students on site is a decision that happens almost countywide. I get on the phone with superintendents. We have a meeting at 4:15 in the morning sometimes to talk about what's happening and what we're going to be doing about school. So it's a decision made together.
I found a great this past
Season?
e-learning day, a great page on our website that it's like, how do we make these decisions and what are some of the guidelines? So it has temperatures and stuff too.
Well, yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
But there are no particular parameters about when. I mean, it relates to, can we get our kids to school, to and from
Correct.
school safely? Are they safe outside waiting for a bus?
Correct. And that's about, there's cold parameters.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
So there's not really any, if X and Y, then we must not have school.
Correct.
Except for maybe the cold piece of it. But
Yeah.
it's subjective, in other words.
Yes. Anything else right now? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Glickman.
Oh, Jim was just saying before we had air conditioning in the schools, we had to close them for heat.
For heat.
At the beginning of the year.
Oh, it's on
Yeah.
the...
Mm-hmm. It explains basically what Dr. Glickman just did, kind of what the process is and what are the different factors. It's really good.
All right, that brings us to topics for future agenda items.
Yes, I have some. So we'll start the next board meeting with the policy committee meeting. Okay, so that will include all of the new press policies. There are not that many, and you already have them. It will include the student fees discussion, yeah? And it will also include updates to our discipline policy. So I'll be bringing you those as well. So then we'll talk about policies in the board meeting. We'll have the tentative budget. Senator Edley Allen is coming at the start of the meeting, so I'm speaking a little out of order, but she's coming to talk with all of you. We'll be doing a 3-year capital timeline update and 2 actions I'm aware of, approving the K-8 science resource and then the student fees we'll be bringing back to you. Before I go on cabinet, there's nothing else for the next one, right? I think I've got it. Okay. And then the last board meeting in June, we may again have a policy committee meeting if we need a second one. We'll be bringing you a district strategic plan goals update. So you'll see what our work is for the upcoming school year. Mrs. Gluck is going to do a meeting student needs report. She's going to be talking about both remediation and extension. And then we'll have action, which is policies. We also, Dr. Diaz has a newcomers presentation in the hopper ready to go. We're just looking for the right board meeting. We thought we would do it then. At this point, I'm thinking we might not do it until July because there's so much already on that June board meeting. Anything else anybody was hoping for a board meeting coming up? Oh, and I wanted to speak to something you said before, Christy. You made reference in your board report about WOLD coming in June. We don't have WOLD coming in June. So
I think we're considering options in June, so maybe it's...
No. So, okay. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I want to make sure I'm understanding what the board is hoping is happening in June so that we can either make it happen or make it happen later in the summer.
Is it part of the Citizen Task Force you're talking about?
So I'll review the memo and I'll just get back to you on it.
Okay, sounds good.
I did want to just suggest that if we are serious about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we have a community member who has been involved in several greenhouse gas emissions projects and waste reduction process. She's been a task force leader, works at CLC, and has worked under David Huesmeller, who's the sustainability director at CLC. I would like to hear her give a presentation about materials, a little in more depth than I'm able to speak to, so I'm wondering if that would serve the board, because she's willing to take a deep dive into things like the building materials that would be most common to construction projects and give us some ideas on how we can recycle and reduce our waste stream. Okay. Is that something we can add?
Would that be for us or is that for WOLD?
So if we want that, we have to request it as part of the design specifications. I can tell you more about that I don't have my notes with me, but I met with the sustainability director of a construction company, and she told me the path, that it has to be specifically articulated in the design specs if we want this to be part of our program.
So I'm thinking about what you're asking for, and it's for the board to decide, but I'm thinking about your question about WOLD coming to a board meeting next month. And so we are at this point pretty far away from any construction building plans, right? So, what our community has to decide is actually what work is going to happen, and then the plans will be made as to how it happens and the timeline for it and what materials will be made and all of that. So I think that might address what you're talking about. So that's why we don't have WOLD coming, because we have not given WOLD a direction in terms of what work should be happening. That's all, the task force is talking about that, and yeah, can you jump in? Thank you.
Yes, so I'm just looking at what work we have remaining years 2 and 3 that's not been planned, and I'm just pulling it up. We have exhaust fans through various buildings. We've got sidewalk and concrete work. We have the roof at Avon. we've got carpet at Meadowview, and we've got the GMS fire doors, and that totals about $1.6 million of years 2 and 3. I know, Jason, you asked me several meetings ago, hey, what are you planning for years 4, 5, and 6? We don't have a funding right now for that until a funding source is derived, which would either be something that's from operating, or it would be something from an alternate revenue bond, which is something that we discussed on Monday. So there are extensive things that the district needs to do. We can't plan that yet because we don't have a funding source, and we haven't done any reprioritization of of the projects from years 4 through 10. Once we have that, and we instruct our architects, this is work that we need to do, we can do that, and we can ask for that as part of the specifications.
And
We're
what
several steps away from that.
And what you're talking about, Chris, that'll be discussed, the 3-year capital timeline update, that will happen at the next board meeting, where you're just sharing, you and Adam are sharing, here's the work, right, over the next couple of years.
We're sharing what's being done over the summer and what's going to be done over next year.
Yeah.
And where we're at in budget. That's what that's going to be.
So are you saying that conversation maybe is a matter of timing to be closer to?
Maybe, because I don't know a lot about it, to be honest with you. I'm going to be really, really honest with you. More than willing to have that conversation. And definitely, if that's what we want as a school district, we have to tell our architect ahead of time for that. Because what we don't want to do is for them to draw specification documents up and at the last minute say, can you have certain sustainability criteria, and then it's not been put in. So ahead of time, as soon as possible, if we wish to instruct Walt to do that.
I do want to bring back a discussion at some point. I don't know, at the next meeting. I won't be at the next meeting. I'll be at CEDAL. But the student representative for the board, I'd like to bring that back on the radar of the board. And I've begun the process of reaching out to a couple places that, including the presenters that we saw at. But I don't want to lose that site because we've talked about that a little bit. So at some point in the future, I'd like to bring that back.
So could we put that on for?
Yeah, you could.
Could we actually put it on for the July meeting?
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Can I just back up? Where did we land with the presentation? Because I need to, are we saying we don't want it? Or are we saying we want it in July? Or are we, because and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but the point of me bringing it up now is so that we have the information ahead of time, so we're not shoving it in at the last minute. So it's like a 10-minute presentation. Are we saying we don't want that in June, or are we saying we want it at a different time? I'm not sure what we're saying.
I'm totally fine with it in June. That would be my preference. But I won't be at the June 7th meeting. Are you still out in June too as well? But I don't mind later.
We have 2 meetings in June, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, as long as they're not overloading one agenda, I'm fine with it in June.
So probably, as I look at the presentations that we have, probably the June 7th meeting is a little bit later than the June 21st. So are you wanting to bring someone here? I mean, you're not going to be here. Do you want it to happen?
I'm not married to the any one meeting, just so long as it happens in time for us to decide whether we want to make that a criteria or not.
Can we do it in July?
In July, it doesn't like. I
July?
don't care when.
July sounds great.
You want to do it in July?
Yes. Okay.
I just want to add, I think it'll be good to have something like that, because at one of the meetings with Wold, I remember sustainability came up, and Jim, you even mentioned we seem to make a lot of decisions through lenses of sustainability and equity. And so it'll be good to kind of clarify, what do we mean as a board and as each other when we say sustainability? Because it's not just building materials, it's ecology, equity, it's a lot of things. So this will be one small piece of that.
Yeah, the only thing I can add on to that is we need to also, maintain our fiscal responsibility, right? If one of these projects is gonna be more costly to do just for the sustainability part, it may not be wise to do it, especially at a time where we are not in a good financial spot. So we have to keep the financial part of that, and we have to, you know, I'm okay, we talked about earlier with a deficit spend, I'm okay with deficit spending as long as the dollars are going towards the kids. And that's where the important part is their achievement in our district. So there's a balancing act we have to do between the sustainability, the fiscal responsibility, and the impact on the kids, that it's a, you know, 4 balls up in the air that we gotta juggle, and we gotta make sure that we make the right decision that flows through as much of those lenses as we can possibly do.
Yeah, I would just add fiscal responsibility is part of sustainability. And we, sometimes health, there isn't a price for that. So like we wouldn't choose to spend a lot of money on putting pesticides on the grass all around the schools every day of the year, because that would be fiscally irresponsible and also socially irresponsible. That's a bad example, but you get the idea, so.
All right. Any public comments signed up for that doesn't look like it? Okay. I think we do need to go on to closed session, so we'll try to make this quick too, because it's getting late. So I need a motion to move into closed session.
So moved.
Second. LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman, and Braden.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.